I can get all the council members to take their seats, I'm going to start the meeting in a moment. I'd like to call the June council meeting to order. Clerk, please take the roll. Present. Here. Present. Present. Here. Present. Present. Everyone, please stand and join the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under public acknowledgments and commendations, this evening I have a proclamation to read into the record. Be it resolved, whereas Chief William M. McKenna, a longtime resident of Cranston, who graduated from LaSalle Academy and attended Providence College and Community College of Rhode Island, a respected member of the Cranston Fire Department, who has served the city of Cranston and its residents faithfully for 40 years, and whereas Chief McKenna first joined the ranks of the Cranston Fire Department on November 13th, 1979 as a private, and rose through the ranks to become a lieutenant on June 6th, 1990, and then captain on March 25th, 2000, attaining the rank of deputy chief on July 1st, 2002, and was then appointed chief of the department on March 29th, 2011. And whereas during his tenure as chief, he served as the director of Emergency Management Agency for the city of Cranston and stewarded Cranston residents safely through numerous unprecedented natural disasters, such as the 500-year flood of 2010, Hurricane Irene in 2011, one of the deadliest, most destructive hurricanes that hit our area in over a half a century, and Superstorm Sandy in October 2012, and the microburst storms of July 2015, which flashed through the city, causing significant damage, and the winter storm Nemo in 2013, which was rivaled only by the blizzard of '78. And whereas he will be fondly remembered not only by the men and women of his command, but by all of Cranston for his efforts in public service, which significantly benefited the city of Cranston and its residents, but more especially, he will always be remembered for his kindness and gentlemanly manner. Now therefore be it resolved that the Cranston City Council, in recognition and appreciation of his 40 years of dedicated and committed service to the Cranston Fire Department from November 13th, 1979 to July 5th, 2019, on the memorable occasion of his retirement, effective July 5th, wish to express their thanks and appreciation for his dedication, honesty, integrity, and faithful public service to the city of Cranston and all its residents. We hereby set our hands and seal on this, the 24th day of June, 2019. Congratulations, Chief McKenna, on your well-deserved retirement. Before I close this section of the meeting and move on, would anyone from the council like to make any words for the chief? Council Vice President.
Thank you, Council President. I am along with Councilman Stichels, we've been on the longest in our 9th year. and we've known the chief during all that time. And just to tell you what kind of a human being the chief is, I'm going to relate a story that not many people even know about. Something that happened a couple of years ago after one of our safety meetings, the safety committee that we had, which involved police, fire, administration, and some council people. And we were outside after one of the meetings, and a homeless gentleman that we recognized came in, and I think he used to come in and use facilities, and the janitor was gracious to him all the time. But he looked troubled. He was inebriated, apparently, but the chief, the police chief was there, I think Director Lopez, myself, and everybody was trying to help him in their own way. What can we do for you? Are you getting any benefits? You have money? You want to go to the homeless shelter? And he didn't want to go there. And he lived under a bridge of his own choosing, actually, and he was a veteran. So everybody offered him some kind of help, but it was the chief who said, do you think you're going to make it through the night? Because it was a pretty cold night. And the man said no. So the chief said, hailed one of our fire or rescue wagons and took him to a place near Rhode Island Hospital that he knew would take care of him. And that's the kind of man that he is. And so I learned a lot that night, and I always respected him for everything else he did, but that just really struck me. So I just want to relate that story. There were only 4 or 5 of us there at the time. So thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Councilor McCauley. Thank you, Council President. It's been an honor, Chief, to be a council member while you've been our chief. If you look around the room, you'll see the rank and file of the members, and that just shows the respect you warrant. And we're going to miss you, sir, and I wish you good health. Councilor Hopkins.
Thank you, President. 40 years working in this city, and the day you retire, people look at your legacy, and I'm going to tell you straight out, you're a good man. No matter what else we do in our lifetime, if you can retire after 40 years and people look at you and say, Chief, you're a good man, it's all worth it. Congratulations and all the best.
Councilmember Paplaskas.
Thank you, Council President. I'd just like to wish Chief McKenna the best and congratulations. You've done a tremendous job for our city. We have the best fire department in the country because of the hard work of everybody, but also everything that you've done. And I like to brag and say, as far as fire safety, my ward has the best fire safety because you live in my ward. So I don't know if the next guy might have to move to Knightsville or somewhere close by, but well wishes and thank you for everything you've done for our department, and you'll be missed.
Councilmember Vargas.
Thank you, Council President. Chief, congratulations, best wishes on your retirement, and thank you for your dedicated service to the city of Cranston. Truly appreciate it. In 4 years is certainly a lot of time, and thank you for, again, being not only obviously leader in the fire department, but definitely keeping us safe. It's not an easy job, so thank you. Best wishes.
Councilmember Brady.
Following my fellow council people said, I'm truly appreciative of all the service that you've done for the city of Cranston. You've made our city a better place to live, a safer place to live, and since my short time being on the council, it's been a pleasure working with you, so good luck in your retirement, sir.
No one else? Councilmember Stegos?
Yeah, I'd like to thank you also, and I imagine that now every time the phone rings, you won't have to cringe. So, you should enjoy that.
Councilmember Dalian.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief, for your dedication and service to Cranston. I know we all appreciate it, and to hear the words of my colleagues up here speaks volume to the person you are, so thank you, and enjoy your retirement.
Deputy Chief, would you like to say a few words? I demoted you, I'm sorry. I don't think I have that power, though. I'm new at this retirement thing, so all I can say is thank you. Thank you to this council, and thank you to the people of the city of Cranston for having kept me on their payroll for the past 40 years. I was thinking as I was sitting there how things come full circle. Just about 40 years ago, I stood right where that other podium is and was sworn in as a rookie firefighter, a probationary firefighter, John Anderson and myself, sworn in by Mayor Ed Dupree. A long time ago. And 8 short years ago, I stood here and was given the position of fire chief in this great city. It's been a pleasure, and it's been an opportunity that you wouldn't believe to help build a fire department with these people behind me, all these good people, and I appreciate them coming out tonight to help me out. A small thing that's mentioned in the presentation is how all those storms all rivaled the blizzard of '78. Well, in a small town, in a small fire station in 1978, this guy was a fire chief and had his first major disaster, the blizzard of '78. So from the blizzard of '78 to the storms of the 20s and teens, I've learned an awful lot. It got us through with the help of this council, with the help of this administration, and most importantly, with them. They are the Cranston Fire Department. Standing back there is my replacement chief, Bill Valletta, Steve McIntosh. I know that going forward, this department will thrive, this department will continue to build, and continue to be the greatest fire department in the whole nation. They work hard. All of these people are dedicated to the fire service. They made my job at times a challenge, a good challenge. But most importantly, they made my job easy because of their dedication and their desire to protect the people of the city of Cranston. So again, I thank them. I thank this council. I thank all the councils who have supported me along the way. We would not be the fire department that we are without you, without the administration, and most importantly, without the firefighters behind me. And there are 2 other people I want to introduce who've been with me, who walked into a fire station some almost 50 years ago, be 49 years on July 11th. Let a young kid walk into a fire station, let him hop on the back of a fire truck and pursue this career. My mom and my dad, Gerard McKenna and Mary McKenna. And along with them is an already retired McKenna who was the fire chief in East Greenwich for many years, my brother John. Thank you again for your support. Thank you again for this great proclamation. I know that you continue to support all the members of this fire department. Thank you. Portion of the meeting is now closed. Moving on to public hearings. This is limited to docketed matters. Name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Carl Schuberth. I'm at 1599 Pippin Orchard Road.
Carl, so can you do me a favor? Sure. Can you go second? Sure. Sorry, Carl.
Thank you, Mr. President, council members, administration. I'd just like to say a few words about my friend, Chief McKenna. He's a very unassuming man to look at, but I can tell you he's one of the most tenacious firefighters I've ever worked with. We have a saying in the fire department, first in, last out. That was Bill McKenna. Probably one of the most intelligent firefighters I've ever worked with. Knows everything there is to know about firefighting. Excuse me for getting emotional, but we've been friends for 35 years. Listen,
Councilman Hopkins said something that's very important. Although he's a great firefighter, he's a great person. And in a world that's pretty nasty sometimes, we need people like Chief McKenna. And that goes right to his parents, because that's the upbringing. So I wish him health, happiness, and retirement, and I love you, brother.
My name is Carl Schubert. I'm at 1599 Fulton Orchard Road. I have some handouts. Big surprise. I don't know if you can help me out. For the folks that were not on the subcommittee, so I have, I think, 4 handouts for them. So,
You saw it too, right?
thank you. So basically, I'm here in favor of the ordinance, or the amendment to the ordinance 54490, specifically Section D. So as originally written, as it came out of the subcommittee, I want to thank the subcommittee for the vote. It was 3-2, so I appreciate the support, and I think a lot of residents support that effort. For my own edification here regarding mobile food trucks and storage and things of that nature, this is just directed at the council. What city in Rhode Island was the first to move forward with mobile food trucks? Do we know? Don't know. Okay. For my own edification, what was the revenue projections for mobile food trucks? Meaning, was this looked at from a financial model, how many food trucks, fees, revenue? Do we know? I mean, what was initially anticipated?
I don't think... Most President, do you want us to answer anything? From the subcommittee meeting, I guess.
No, let's call on some questions during the debate. If you want to jot them down, okay, go back to them. So basically, the point the reason I'm here is, I guess, at the end of the day, this night really is a vote. If it goes to vote, this is the balance between business and residents, right? I got involved in the social experiment, not willingly, with regards to mobile food trucks being in the neighborhood, and my neighbor and I reached out to the Department of Health at all levels and got no response. So this is back in May of 2018. We then engaged the city of Cranston, who listened to our point of view and challenges that we encountered, and listened to the experiences that we kind of went through. And then lastly, in order to try to fast-track this, we engaged Walt Buteau, who did an undercover story for a couple of months, which aired back in November of 2018. The document that I handed out was really for new members that weren't part of the subcommittee, so they could at least, what I wanted to address is some new information that I brought to the subcommittee that I wanted to share with everybody, which was on page 6 of that document. It identifies that there was a food truck explosion in Philadelphia back in 2014. The settlement for that food truck explosion was $160 million. There was another food truck explosion in a residential neighborhood in the state of Minnesota, which is on page 7 of that document. And basically, on page 9 of that document I handed out is that the state of Minnesota has on record, in terms of regulations that they passed, was basically nearly 100 food trucks that are in the state of Minnesota are all affiliated with either local restaurants or park at a restaurant, or they park at a commercial parking lot. So I just wanted to bring that forward, that that's nothing new in terms of us looking to pass this type of amendment forward. I brought up in the past about the hours of mobile food trucks, comparing that to someone who is a woodworker or a carpenter or a plumber, that the hours of these particular trucks are not really conducive to a residential neighborhood. The impact, which I laid out on page 12, just in terms of the size of these trucks, these size range about the size of a UPS or FedEx trucks, and they're painted in a variety of different colors. I get it. You have to have different vibrant colors so the folks know which truck they want to go to. Again, I think I'm looking for the council to put their best foot forward and try to balance out what makes sense, not only for the business. Again, I know that you folks are trying to get this business off the ground, generate revenue, but at the same time try to balance as to what the impact is to the residents. Was there an impact study done for what it would look like or what the impact was for mobile food trucks moving into a neighborhood? Was there any study done by the council or an outside entity? No? Okay. So basically, as it stands right now, as I talked about the size of these trucks being the size of a UPS FedEx truck, UPS and FedEx don't allow these trucks, their own trucks, into the neighborhood. And these particular trucks not only have propane, but they also have a grill. Currently, as it stands right now, no matter what side of the issue you're on, if you're not for this particular amendment being placed forward, one of the things I think the city has to look at is the city currently has no limit on the amount of food trucks that can be parked at a residential home at the moment. So there's no limit, and there's no size of truck. I know we spoke at the last meeting about weight, but size, shape, there's currently no limit on the books as it stands now. So I know I was obviously recommending that these things don't be parked in a residential neighborhood because I don't think it's the right quote-unquote fit. The other piece of that is I know these food trucks run anywhere from $100,000 and up, so I don't think the barrier to entry or getting into this business has to do with how much it costs to actually park a particular vehicle. So I also put forward some recommendations to the city, which is one, if the city wants to get behind this business, which again is, I think it's great, I get it. You want to generate revenue, and you want these businesses, this particular business, to be a part of the community. Again, I understand that. One of the things is that the city can look at is lowering their fees, so that when mobile food trucks can't afford the storage to park their car and get it out of the residential neighborhood and park it in a commercially zoned location. So that could be one thing. Another thing was looking at vacant lots, or basically number two was commercial lots. Number two was city-owned property, such as schools that are vacant most of the time, where these mobile food trucks could be parked. Again, if the issue is just parking, then the city has plenty of property. And the third item I looked at was just vacant lots in the city where these things could be parked at. So anyways, I went through that, talked about open lots, and 17 through 21 on that document that I passed out shows the different sizes, shapes, colors of mobile food trucks. That's all I have to say. Again, I understand the industry. My grandmother is a baker, so I understand the hours. I understand the commitment. I don't have any grudge against anyone who gets up every day, makes something, and then puts a smile on someone's face when receiving that. Just the issue that I'm looking for is this the best we can do as a city council for the residents of Rhode Island and of Cranston in balancing that against this new industry? So, thank you for your time, Mr. Port. Appreciate it.
Anyone else to speak on any docketed matters? Name and address for the record.
Robert Wilson, 114 Mayflower Drive. I just wanted to ask if we could have permission to defer public comment until the Council President Communications portion of the docket, specifically the yard works status update from the city.
Yeah, I don't think anybody objects to us having some public comment on yard works during that section of the meeting.
Okay.
Any objections?
No, it's not a docketed item, so it should go under the general public comment anyway.
We'll leave some time during Council President communications for public comment.
Okay, thank you.
How are you? I'm Steve Boyle, President of Cranston Chamber of Commerce, 200 Midway Road, Suite 165, in Cranston, in Garden City. I'm actually here to oppose the ordinance the way it's written, basically due to the feet away from an existing restaurant. I opposed this originally. I opposed food trucks a long time ago for the bricks and mortar. If you've been on the council, you remember that. It's my job to protect those restaurants in the city as well. But what's happened over the several years, the fabric has changed. I've actually had the bricks and mortar people asking me, why can't I do a food truck? Because they would like to put the food trucks out after the restaurants or after other facilities close so they could capture more revenue at that point. Well, I said, we can't do that because you opposed it in the first place. So it sort of got swept aside on the other side. But it's really become a part of our fabric of our society. We have food truck races now on national TV. If you little tykes, you can buy a food truck for your kid meal to see it. So it's really become part of what we are now and how we actually do this. But again, I think 400 feet is a little excessive. If you look at the city of Providence and then you look at the city of Warwick, 200 feet is the area that they allow. I don't think our restaurants are any more unique than the capital city or the city of Warwick. I go to the ones behind City Hall. There's several restaurants that are open. There has to be minimal impact at this point on those restaurants as well. And I also noted that you've created a diversity committee. I don't know of any other place that you can get more of a diverse situation, from Korean barbecue, Jamaican food, Mexican food. It's a built-in diversity committee in itself. So it's one of the first things that I've had in introduction to different types of food as well. But it really is, my objection is really more to the feet away from an existing restaurant. I think you really need to bring it in line with the capital city and now the third largest city in the state. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Good evening. Name and address for the record, please.
Joe Roosevelt, 303 Main Ave, Warwick, Rhode Island. I'm glad I waited to see Stephen Boyle because I never thought I'd see a quarter flip like that. I'm here to talk about the food truck ordinance. I think that the 400-foot rule, I don't feel the same. I'm also a restaurant owner. I'm a food truck owner, and I'm a restaurant owner. I feel that 200 feet, as it's sat with the 300 feet, is fine. Bringing it down to 200 feet, that's basically outside my parking lot. As a taco shop, I don't want a pizza truck 200 feet out of my place. And I also think that Cranston, when the first ordinance was put in with the 1,000-foot, that was basically a no-go. It was a go away, we don't want food trucks. Now Cranston comes back with a 300, which means you guys are willing to talk and play, and I think that's a great place to start. But I think going to 200, Cranston is a restaurant city. I think going to 200, just stepping on the toes of the restaurants again, and that's going to make it sore for food trucks. I think that there should be a level playing ground there for, where we can and can't be. I know that there's some events and things that food trucks, as a food truck operator, we do where we go into rotations at like businesses, like big business complexes, and we like doing rotations there where we'd go every other Wednesday, every third Wednesday, and they put it out in emails and stuff to all the offices that the trucks will be there.
But once again, as a restaurant owner, I found the restaurant across the street from this building that pays everything that I pay to be there. It is kind of hard to see a food truck pull up in front of, in between me and my regular patrons and, stop some of that business. So, I just feel that 300, 400's fine. I think 200 is excessive on the far end. So, I also wanted to just say quickly about the commissary, about having food trucks at a commissary. I feel a bit biased that I'm mentioning it because I do own a commissary and food trucks do work out of my commissary in Cranston. But I also remember the times when I first started out and I was unable to afford a commissary. Commissaries actually didn't exist. So I built the commissary knowing that I was going to rent it to other trucks. And when I finished, that's exactly what I did. And I think if you talk to any truck owner that goes from working off of their truck to working in a commissary, you see that you have more tools to your trade, and it's definitely a way to step forward in your business. I mean, if you're at the other end where it's unattainable and it's tough, I still feel for you, but I'd like to say to any food truck owner out there that if you get a commissary, or if you get into a commissary, or if you work with a commissary, you definitely have more of a chance of being more successful as a truck. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you. Anyone else? Name and address for the record.
Hi, James Ainelli, 12 Aldbrook Drive. Between us, we own one ice cream truck that's parked at my residence, 12 Alderbrook Drive. It's not a fleet. It's one that we work part-time during the summer. We have other part-time jobs. And prices range from $1 to $4. The median price is $2.50. If you do your math, it takes a lot of stops to make, a substantial amount of money. This net that's being cast on food trucks, I feel is snaring the little ice cream truck as well. We don't really operate like a food truck. It's been parked at my house for the last 5 years. Haven't had any complaints. It's parked behind a fence. And I just feel that if we have to move the vehicle and find a commercial area to park it in, it's a very small business. And to have another expenditure like that would effectively be putting us out of business. It's not even a small business, it's a micro business. One truck, not a fleet. And it's just a part-time gig that we do.
Also, we don't have a propane tank, so there's no safety issues, with this no cooking truck. I mean, it's just lemonade and packaged ice cream. That's it. So this could really, hurt our business, having us to pay for a rental spot.
Again, it's $2.50 is about the average per sale. And so again, I feel that to have to park one vehicle, I can understand if we had more than one truck, to force us to park at a commercial place, pay rent, and to do that, the profits are small enough, but that would basically make it where it's, just thinking about it this weekend, I didn't have that hustle and grind. I was thinking, why should I do this? If I have to pay another expense, it's not really worth it to me. And so that's how I see it. Not to put the food truck business, under the bus. We don't compete with restaurants. I don't go near ice cream shops or frozen lemonade. It's strictly residential, away parks, playgrounds. And I feel that net is catching us little minnows is how I look at it. You're looking for maybe bigger tuna, and you're snaring these little minnows, which is basically how I see us. We're just a small ice cream truck. That's it.
But also the city collects, they collect the fees for the licenses, the state collects the real estate, retail sales tax. So if you put these small ice cream trucks out of business, the state's going to suffer. It's bad enough that, the state is struggling economically, but us small guys, will be finished.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Hello. Here to represent my husband, Shane Caledonia. He's owner of Baby's Bonetown Barbecue, otherwise known as Bonetown Burgers and Barbecue in Knightsville. He's had the food truck for 2.5 years, always ran it very much up to par with all regulations, including health, safety, fire, everything. He couldn't be here tonight because he has another event, but I will say that in looking through these regulations and talking with Eric Weiner of Food Trucks In, I've noticed that it seems like it's going to make things a little more difficult for food trucks. And if you know anything about the food business, it's already hard enough. So if you just consider streamlining things to be more like Pawtucket and Providence, most of the food truck operators out there are just there to make a living. And the whole idea to not allow the storage in the residential area, storage alone shouldn't be an issue. I understand running your truck out of your house is completely illegal and nasty, but storage, that's, like these guys were saying, that's going to put a lot of people out of business. There aren't licensed commissaries available for a lot of these trucks. It wouldn't affect us, again, because we already operate out of a licensed commissary, but if we ever wanted to move to Cranston and say we wanted to park our truck in the driveway overnight because my husband was exhausted, you're telling me that he would have a fine for that. I just want you to consider the whole thing. Thank you for letting me speak.
Good evening, Council President, entire Council, Mr. Stenographer. I will try to talk slower tonight for you. My name is Eric Lane. I'm a Cranston resident and a business owner in Cranston, and I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about why I think passing this food truck ordinance as written would be a failure and hurt the food truck industry. First off, to address some of the earlier comments about safety of food trucks, the provisions are in place already. The state fire marshal inspects every single food truck, and the Department of Health has significant food safety standards in place. There is no opportunity for a food truck to operate a business from their home. And if the city of Cranston were to pass an ordinance that said a food truck can park at their residence but cannot operate their business, we would be in support of that. But this current ordinance pulls food trucks out of all other commercial vehicles in the city and says they can't be parked at a residence when any other commercial vehicle that has a carrying weight of 1 ton or under can. And I think it's important to point out what these gentlemen that own an ice cream truck pointed out is that one of the things that this council will have to do is, although 5.44, which is your mobile food truck ordinance, is being addressed, 5.40, which is hawkers and peddlers, has been untouched. And as of next week, there's no such thing as a hawker and peddler. 5.40 and 5.44 all fall under the state guideline of a mobile food enterprise. And a mobile food enterprise is exactly that. It is every single food truck, ice cream truck, Della's truck, hot dog cart, anybody that's in any mobile food enterprise, you have banned them from parking their vehicle at home. The issues about fire safety have been addressed with the state fire marshal. The issues about health safety have been addressed with the Department of Health. So I think it's a very big mistake for this council to take action between two neighbors that have had a dispute and taken that dispute and turned it into an ordinance that bans all food trucks from being able to park at their homes.
I ask you to look at that very carefully before voting on this ordinance. Secondly, in addressing the 400-foot distance, when this was originally submitted as an ordinance, it was submitted as 300 feet from a similar business. And I got up and I testified and said, that means that if you own a taco shop and I'm selling hot dogs, I can park within 5 feet of your restaurant because the ordinance says 300 feet of a similar business. Similar food item is actually what I believe it said. We recommended that you just go with a straight 200-foot distance from any open restaurant so there's no confusion about defining whether or not a pizza and a hot dog is a similar food item or not. 200 feet to me is more than a reasonable compromise. When the Institute of Justice has taken this to court, it's been ruled that any distance is unconstitutional if it isn't in place for safety only. This council has not been, does not have a history of telling Taco Bell that it can't open next to McDonald's or telling McDonald's that it can't open next to Marchetti's. And I think the 200-foot compromise is both reasonable and it's what is now in place in more and more cities and towns across Rhode Island, which is what makes this easier for food truck owners to understand what the rules are for their staff from city to city. It's a fair distance. If you look at how far 400 feet is, you're actually going to take areas of potential blight where there is no food service and put the range of where a truck can park outside the range of where it can be, helpful and useful to draw attention to a neighborhood in Cranston. And furthermore, there have been no complaints or issues in any other city or town with either A, trucks parking inside 200 feet when they're not supposed to, or B, restaurants saying that parking within 200 feet has hurt their business. There have actually been more cases where trucks will park in an area that is drawing attention to an area that maybe hasn't gotten attention from people in neighboring towns, and they will come in to visit the food trucks, and then they will stay and have a drink at a local bar, or have dessert at a restaurant, or come back and eat. So I ask you to please relook at the 400 feet and think about making it in line with other cities and towns. And then I'd also like to address the language that requires food trucks to get a City of Cranston permit if they are only operating on state land. The Pastore Complex, the Division of Motor Vehicles, the property that's attached to that Mulligan's Island leases from the state, have all been an area where food trucks have gone regularly when invited by the state to operate when a cafeteria is closed for renovations or for a holiday or for an employee appreciation. There are a number of food trucks that just service those areas that don't do any other business in Cranston, and telling those trucks that in order to operate on that state land when the Department of Administration already have rules in effect that says cities and towns don't have oversight over buildings on state land, it seems to be asking the city clerk and the council to get involved in an area where it's not necessary and provide more work again for small food truck owners. Those food truck owners should have the right to decide if they want to do business in other parts of Cranston and get the city permit versus just operating on that state land and not needing to get the city permit. I understand that there's some confusion about whether or not part of the land that Mulligan's Island owns is indeed state land or not, but I think that that's something that could be cleared out very easily. And this ordinance getting passed as it is would mean that we would not be able to do events at Mulligan's Island anymore. The local food trucks would not be getting a city permit if there's a 400-foot restriction from restaurants, and if they can't park their trucks at home, and if they have to get a city permit to be at Mulligan's Island, we would probably look for an alternate location to do that event that we do twice a summer at Mulligan's Island. And then lastly, I just want to bring up again, I did not even see this earlier times that I testified, that 540 is your city ordinance on hawkers and peddlers. That entire ordinance also goes away with the new state law, which now redefines them as mobile food enterprises. And just quickly on this, I believe this is probably something that will be more appropriate for the committee at some point. But there are carve-outs here for St. Mary's Feast Parade, Immaculate Conception Festival, Cranston Full of Harvest. All of these individual events have carve-outs in here, and my recommendation would be, now that you have an event permit, that the restrictions that are in place for mobile food enterprises simply say that those same restrictions are applying to anyone that pulls an event permit. So one of the things is that rather than having carve-outs for each individual event, it should be very simply stated that if someone pulls an event permit,
that they now have the right to invite whatever vendors they want under their event permit, and no other vendor with a license can park the same 200 feet from, that event as whatever it is. Otherwise, as more and more events occur in Cranston, you're going to have this ordinance that's going to have to list out carve-outs for multiples of events. It should be very simple that if you pull an event, then anyone that attends has to be approved by that event and have an MFE license. There's a lot in 540 that needs to be unpacked with the new state law, but I know that we're focusing on 544. So again, the three things, the 400 feet is really hurtful to the trucks. It really is not much different than 1,000 feet. The difference between 1,000 feet and 400 feet is not significant. The overnight parking is a terrible burden on the local food truck community, and the ability for food trucks to operate on state-owned land that happens to be within Cranston without having to get a permit if that's the only business they do, are the three things that I would ask you to consider tonight. Thank you.
Members of the council president, thank you for having me. My name is Joseph Reese, 212 Cleveland Street. I'm the health agent in the city of Fall River and also a member of Food Trucks. And I've been with Eric now for about a year and a half, and basically what I see here is what we're trying to develop over in Fall River. Just recently we've had a food truck event that brought in approximately 1,500 people from local communities. Businesses were able to vend their product tableside on the curbside. Local shops, which normally would be closed at that hour, they were able to open up and get new potential customers. In the meantime, we've been trying to get an ordinance passed in the city. Without much difficulty, but we're looking to set a guideline of no more than 200 feet from any local brick and mortar. I mean, you wouldn't want someone parking in front of your business obstructing the view from your business. But then again, on the same token, you got to keep in mind, if I want to open up a restaurant next door, another brick and mortar, there's very little that would stop me from doing so. I think they should set at least 200 feet away from a brick and mortar, unless there's an event in a local section of town where they're having a block party or something like that. And as far as the need for a commissary, as a health agent, absolutely. There should be something where in the permitting process, you need a copy of the latest inspection report from that commissary, a licensed commissary, and you should not be operating out of your home. As far as keeping the truck at the home, some people are limited to where they can keep the truck. As long as they're not running generators or any type of nuisance in the neighborhood, I don't see any problem. I would hope you would consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from public comment? Seeing none, that portion of the meeting is now closed. Moving on to resolutions. Resolution in recognition of the month of June as Pride Month, sponsored by Councilmember Vargas, co-sponsored by Council President Farina, Councilmembers Hopkins, Stekos, Donegan, Brady, and Paplowskis. Councilmember Vargas.
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to read the resolution. Possible? Thank you. As we all know, June has been recognized and is celebrated throughout the entire country as Pride Month. And just this evening, we had our first raising of the Pride flag here outside of City Hall, and it will be flying till the end of the month. And I want to thank everyone that was here this evening to participate in the event, to share and know that our community is welcoming of everyone and that we are an inclusive community. And so with that being said, I want to read the resolution before us this evening. The resolution reads, whereas during the month of June, Pride celebrations are held across the country in recognition of the Stonewall Riots Liberation Movement 50 years ago. And whereas on June 26, 2015, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled in Obergefell versus Hodge, 135S, count 2584, the same-sex couples have constitutional right to marry. And whereas a lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual LGBTQIA community in the United States has fought hard for equal treatment, dignity, and respect. And whereas the city of Cranston is strengthened by and thrives upon the rich diversity of ethnic, cultural, racial, gender, and sexual identities of its residents, all of which contribute to the vibrant characters of our city. And whereas the city of Cranston commits to ensuring the equal treatments of all people, regardless of sexual orientation and gender identity, and recognizes the importance of equality and freedom. And whereas flying the rainbow flag at Cranston City Hall for the month of June further symbolizes the city's celebration of diversity and support for the LGBTQIA community. Now therefore it be resolved that the Cranston City Council does hereby recognize this month of June as Pride Month and urges all citizens to celebrate Pride Month. I'd like to thank the council members who have co-sponsored this resolution and that were also able to join us this evening. So with that being said, I ask the members of the council to vote passage of the resolution.
Entertain a motion to approve. Second. Motion to approve, like full motion approved in like 6 seconds. So with that, any further discussion on the resolution? Before we vote, I'll make the same comments I did during the ceremony earlier this evening. People are people, love is love. The flag is a representation of unity. The more unity we show, the better we can all be together, live together, love together, and work hard to make Cranston the diverse and inclusive place it can be. Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Motion passes unanimously.
Oh, you forgot to make that again.
Councilmember Donegan, did you get a chance to vote?
I don't believe I did, but it is a yes.
So now it's officially unanimous. Before we move on from that, I want to personally thank Councilmember Ramos Vargas for all the work she put into this. This is something that came up out of a conversation she had with a member of her family. She brought it to the administration and got it done. So great work, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Council President. Again, thank you to all the council members and the community for being present this evening. And rest assured that we will surely have the phrasing of the Pride flag next year at the beginning of the month. Thank you.
Moving on, Safety Services and Licensing. Chairman Papalowskis.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. We have 5-19-05, ordinance amending Title 5, Chapter 44 of the Code of City of Cranston, 2005, entitled Business Licenses and Regulations, Mobile Food Truck Establishments, sponsored by Council President Farina, Council Vice President Ficchio, Council Members Brady, Papalowskis, and McCauley. And this was amended and passed in committee on the 17th.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion approved.
Motion approved. Second. Motion is second. Under discussion. Councilmember Donegan, you have the floor first.
Thank you. If it's all right with the body, I'd like to move for a few amendments, minor. And if there, I don't know, if there's an issue, I know there's, it might necessitate a second or another hearing. If that's the case, I would just ask that.
I think the rules are, depending on what your amendments are, if they're substantive in nature, it could potentially require another advertising session. So I would ask both attorneys to listen to the amendments and advise us after his amendments if it would require another advertising. Oh, Councilman Donegan?
All right, so the first one, from hearing the President of the Chamber of Commerce, line 49, before we discuss what the appropriate fee is, I would ask that we add the language, an MFE may operate closer if sponsored by the said open establishment. That way, if a restaurant closes, say their kitchen at 9 p.m. and they still want to be able to serve food to their guests, they can have an MFE or a food truck come and park outside. That way they can still generate, people coming in the door.
I didn't hear, did he have a...
I can hear them from over here, they say it's pretty substantive, so let's, always listen to your attorneys.
I understand the concept of what you're saying, but if an establishment has a BV license, then by necessity, they have to have an open kitchen. So I would ask the clerk if I'm right on that, because she's my boss on that. And I don't think, right, and I don't think you can sub it out to a food truck in the front. I think the establishment itself has to have an open kitchen or food available within the establishment. So I don't know if that, you could make that amendment, even if you wanted to.
You're the expert, so if that's the case, then that seems more than reasonable, and I'll withdraw that amendment.
I have eaten at a lot of food trucks, yes.
All right, the second amendment would be for line 49, line 51, and line 54. I would move for the sole purpose of, for being consistent with other municipalities. I looked at Providence and I looked at Warwick, and they keep it at 200 feet. For the purposes of consistency, I would make a motion to move it to 200 feet of an establishment. So 49, 51, 54 to 200 feet.
I have a motion to change the distance from 300 feet to 200 feet? 400 feet. I'm sorry, yeah, that's right, it was amended in committee. From 400 feet to 200 feet. Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second under discussion. Councilmember Paplowskis.
Thank you. I will be voting against this. I voted to add the extra 100 feet. I went and looked at some radius maps the other day. I downloaded an app on the phone after somebody, I forget who recommended during committee, said, hey, you can download an app and you can see. And somebody had mentioned Taco. So when I left the meeting, I was thinking, serving food at Taco on Cranston Street, went to 400 feet. I hope, that's still a viable location. So when I went home, downloaded the app, I did radius, and I did linear feet from a couple of doors they have, because the ordinance is the front door, I believe. And it didn't box any food trucks out. It was the bagel places down the road, Basil's Pizza is down the other way. It didn't touch Taco Bell. So I think 400 feet is fair enough. I'm also concerned that if we go to 200 feet, we went from 1,000 feet to then the committee kind of says where you can be or not under zones. Then they go to 200 feet. It's so much of a swing. We're not really phasing food trucks in. So I know it matches the other cities and towns, but we've never done it before. So I'm personally erring on the side of caution on this. I know there are some other things the council has done with zoning and other issues where, the toothpaste got out of the bottle and now we're trying to put it back. So I'm gonna be conservative on this. I'm gonna vote no. We can always amend it in a month or two. 400 feet, we realize it's too far. So that's I'm gonna take the safe road on this, and I'm gonna go 400 feet. So I'll be voting no.
Councilmember Stichels?
Yeah, I'm supporting this because 400 feet is a long way. That's, you're standing at home plate at Fenway Park, and it's out on the center field wall. It's just not necessary. So, as like someone said, it's the same effect as 1,000 feet. The point of is to give some kind of a buffer, but 400 feet is just, it's too long, and it's going to eliminate a lot of areas where there could be food trucks. So I think the 200 feet is reasonable. I hope people will support it.
Councilmember Brady and Councilmember Vargas.
I certainly appreciate all the points that were made, including on the public comment earlier. I initially had offered 300 feet, which I thought was a fair compromise from 1,000 feet. I think it's opening us up to be a far more food truck friendly city. I would offer that again. I do think 200 feet is a little bit too close, as some of the other food truck owners even said, and some didn't. So it's a very complicated issue, and I certainly understand Councilman Paplowskis' point. So I would support it in between. I just think 200 is a little too close, and I certainly understand what Chris is saying with 400, but I would love to go back to my original offer an amendment at 300 if possible, so.
Councilman Vargas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. I also am trying to step on this with caution, and so given the fact that this will be new to us in the sense of 300 feet versus 400 or 200 feet, I personally am in favor of leaving this as 400 for the time being, and then as Councilman Papalaskis also mentioned, should we decide to change this within a year, 6 months, see how it's going, I'd be welcome to embrace that conversation once again and move it down. But unfortunately, I will be voting against that motion.
Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, President. Since we're talking about sports fields tonight, 300 feet to 100 yards in this football field, I agree with Councilman Brady. That's a great compromise between the 200 and the 400. Become a good compromise at 300 feet. That seems to work.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Vecchio.
Thank you, Council President. We spent quite a bit of time, about 3 hours at the ordinance meeting, discussing this, trying to speed it up because we were under such a mandate from the state to do something. One of the things that we did discuss, and we asked, and I had reached out to the planning director, Director Pizzullo was going to look into this. We don't even know the impact on all of the restaurants because we haven't done a GIS mapping of all of these, but it's very feasible with our department. It's just a question of they're under the gun with a lot of projects right now. So I think what we were trying to do is err on the side of caution, see how it goes. We planned on getting a report from planning sometime in September or October, I believe, so that we can tweak it. I think it was Council Member Vargas that pointed out how far the distance from, I don't know whether it was from Cranston East here, or there was a 360 feet was not an awful lot either in terms of restaurants. And Knightsville, I don't think 200 is going to help some of the restaurants anyway, or some of the food trucks in Knightsville, because the restaurants are 200 feet apart. So I think it's going to be pretty tough to get, but we really don't have a mapping of this yet. So I think this is a work in progress. We certainly did a lot of work on this. I'm not sure. I'm comfortable with either 300 or 400. I think the 200 is a little too close. But again, until we see the mapping and some work from our planning department to really help us. And they've done it, don't forget they did this with the marijuana dispensaries. They were able to carve out zones where these potential places could go. So the technology's there. It's just going to take a little more time. So I would leave it in place for now until we can get that report.
Any further discussion? Councilman Brady?
I was wondering if Councilman Donegan would consider removing his, or increasing the radius to 300 feet, removing his amendment.
Given the discussion from the body and the effort to compromise so we can find, a middle ground, yes, if I could make a motion to amend my amendment to read line 49, line 51, and line 54, amend 400 feet to 300 feet.
To keep it simple, Councilman Donegan just withdrew his first motion and made a second motion to change the footage from 400 feet to 300 feet. I have a motion and a second. Under discussion on 300 feet. Seeing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Stichels?
Yes.
Councilman Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilman Vargas?
No.
Councilman McCoy?
Yes.
Councilman Donegan?
Yes.
Councilman Brady?
Yes.
Councilman Papalaskis?
No.
Councilman Vecchio?
No.
Councilman Green?
Yes. Councilman McCoy?
Still under discussions, Council President.
Amendments if you want to make them, or discussion of the ordinance as now amended?
If I may just bring up what the gentleman from the ice cream truck said. I understand where they're coming from.
I'm wondering how we can figure out a way to resolve it for these people. Maybe a truck that doesn't have a propane tank or something similar to that, and see if we can fix it so that we're not targeting vehicles and little businesses that are not in this group. I'm opening this up, if I may, Council President, to discussion and see if we can resolve this for these gentlemen.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Can you say that for the record, so I didn't think of that. Madam Clerk, it was a valid point. I believe Mr. Weiner brought it up earlier that it's in the state's definitions, not the city's.
That's correct. It's just reiterated in our ordinance. But what the state did was they specifically took the ice cream and coffee trucks, those, and defined them as MFEs. They no longer helpers or peddlers.
So to clarify, if I may, we can still make a definition differently?
No, they're defined by state statute.
So any statute we pass regarding MFEs would snare small ice cream trucks. Councilman Vargas and then Councilman O'Donovan.
Council President, or actually even to the clerk, so does that mean we can't even propose any type of language at all to say or exclude lemonade trucks or ice cream trucks because they're considered under the MFE?
I would defer to the solicitor to respond to that question.
I think you're right, but I wouldn't mind, I like the lawyers saying, yeah. So yeah, we can't.
Are you talking about whether the state would defer to the states?
Yeah, so we can't change, we can't say we are going to exclude lemonade trucks from this part of the law for MFEs because they are in the class.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Once they're in the class, they're in the class.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Paplaskas.
I defer my time. I'm trying to think of a solution. I thought I had one, but it goes back into the same class. The only other thing is if this council wanted, they could always put a limit on when Section D would go into effect. I don't know if that's a substantive change. You know, say that goes into effect with the rest of the food truck ordinances in January 1, and it gives us some time to look at the weights again and see if we want to tweak that at all. I don't know if we can do that. That's a pretty substantive change, so that's what's going through my head. It's lines 205 to 210. If we could put a time frame in that section, we'll go into ordinance to give us time to think about changing it so we don't box out the ice cream trucks.
Yeah. I know it's tight, but there's nothing in D which says that you cannot park a food truck inside a garage. So you can't park in front of a residential home, on the street, or in the driveway adjacent to a residential home.
Councilman Donegan and Council Vice President Vivekio.
Only if this is regarding another amendment, so if Councilman Paplaskas' inquiry is concluded, then I'll move for an amendment, but if it's...
Council Vice President, I believe has something germane to this subject, and then we can go back to your amendments.
Yeah, a couple of things on this. First of all, the ice cream trucks, I don't know. I'd like to ask them, are you prepping? What are you prepping? You're not cooking anything. What are you just loading ice cream into the refrigerated? Okay, and where do you load them in?
Sorry?
At what location do you do that?
Ice cream.
At the ice cream distributor, correct? Yes. Okay, so I don't really think you come under that rule, to be honest with you. I asked the solicitor, but to me that doesn't come under that rule. You're not cooking. You don't have a generator running at 4 in the morning. You start the truck up, drive it to Warwick Ice Cream, fill it up there, and then go on your route. And is it how big is the truck? Is it 1 ton or less?
It's like a medical van.
So do you know what the tonnage is?
A transport medical van.
Okay, so it's probably less than a ton. I mean, you'd have to get clarification. So if you're under a ton... Okay. I don't think I don't think you'd be in violation, quite frankly, with something that size. That would be my... and I wouldn't have a problem with... we have a one-ton truck limit for other types of vehicles being parked. And I'm not, I don't have a problem with making that the standard, at least temporarily, but anything over 1 ton, I think violates other aspects of our ordinances, and I think too big to be parked in residential areas. But I think that might resolve your dilemma 100%. So that I would offer, there's no real amendment needed, I don't think, to help you guys. I think if your trucks are that small, I think you should be okay.
Chairman Petlauskas, I was just wondering if we had to put an amendment to make it 1 ton or above, so it matches the other law that's in that other code that's in our book. Or if we're thinking about this too much,
We might be.
okay.
Councilman Donegan.
I would like to make a motion to amend line 205 through 210, storage, service, or deliveries on residential property. I'd like to amend that so it reads, no person shall park, idle, or store an MFE in front of a residence or in a driveway of a residence for the purpose of preparing food in said truck.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, absolutely. No person shall park, idle, or store an MFE in front of a residence or in a driveway of a residence for the purposes of preparing food in said truck. Then I'll expand on that.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. So I'm assuming you're eliminating the section that's there currently and replacing it with your verbiage. Is that correct?
Correct. And the rationale behind that is, personally, I feel that if we limit no food trucks parking overnight, I think it sets a precedent and it opens up a slippery slope of what other commercial vehicles are we going to begin to prohibit in residential areas. I think that we can take care of the things we're concerned about, noise, food being prepared, deliveries, those things, in other ways other than prohibiting the parking or storage of it at a residential site. So I think we should go about, and there are, according to health guidelines, those things are already in place. In terms of language that was previously there, such as servicing the food truck, I don't see what servicing a food truck, whether it's the owner changing their own oil or something, is any different from someone changing the oil or whatnot in their truck they use for plumbing or something like that. So that is, the biggest motivator behind this amendment is I think it sets a bad precedent and it opens up a slippery slope of what else are we going to start to prohibit commercial vehicle-wise, as long as it's within that 1 ton bar set by other code.
I have a motion and a second.
Through the chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Just for clarification, Councilman Donegan, you're striking out the first sentence, no MFE shall be parked in front of a residential home on the street or in the driveway next to or adjacent to a residential home for any purpose and for any length of time? That's the first.
Correct. Yes.
You're striking that out. Okay, thank you.
Council Vice President Vecchio.
Thank you, Council President. I don't like the change in the language. I think it would be simpler to just exclude vehicles up to 1 ton in this thing and leave the other provisions in place. I don't want servicing. Do you really want someone loading and unloading a truck at 4 a.m. next door to you? I think that the other language is appropriate. I think the issue with the 1 ton truck, I think, is fine. I think that it's in line with our other ordinances, but to suggest that now we're going to take away the servicing of a food truck, loading supplies, cleaning the MFE, and preparing food in those trucks, I think is what we want to avoid. And matter of fact, Mr. Boisvert said that he thought that was wrong, and even the gentleman from Fall River. That's not the place to do that kind of thing. So I think there's an easier way. I know what you're saying. I think we should do it. But I think we should have them change the language with the one-ton provision as opposed to striking out all of the other language.
Council Vice President, so can I ask, would you suggest adding language that Section D, which I just moved to amend, any vehicle or any MFE under 1 ton would be exempt from those provisions?
We could, no,
exempt from the parking.
well, no MFE over 1 ton in weight.
So I'm gonna stop you guys there and just say we have a motion on the floor to change it. I think if this motion fails or is withdrawn, we wanted to talk about an alternative motion, I think we could do that, but Councilman Stichels has his hand up, and I'm going to defer to him.
Yeah, just to Councilman Dunnigan, your answer to the clerk on your amendment kind of puzzled me, because you told her you were only trying to amend the first sentence. Now, the second sentence says you can't park overnight at a residence.
So what I understood the question from the clerk was that the first sentence was included in the section that I was attempting to amend. I guess for clarification, I was seeking to strike line 205 beginning with no MFE through line 2010 ending in food in said truck. I was looking to amend that entire section and add and replace it with the verbiage that I had motion for. So I apologize for any confusion that I might have caused.
All right, thank you.
Any further discussion on Councilmember Brickey? Councilmember Brickey?
Oh, sorry. I certainly understand Councilman McCoy's point, and with the new, I think this is a very tough, with the state now putting ice cream trucks, lemonade carts, hot dog carts, all MFEs, it puts us in a tough predicament here as a council. I certainly think we've worked very hard to make the city of Cranston a friendlier food truck city, and I think we want to continue to do so. We've also heard testimony from residents who are scared and afraid of the repercussions. I wonder, by making the city more friendly, how many more trucks are going to want to come into our residence. So I still do, I like Councilman Favicchio's point regarding the tonnage. I'm not exactly sure on your amendment, John, but I certainly understand it. And I just think more work needs to be done on that particular point. So.
Anyone else? Councilmember Stichels.
Yeah, I just think that if a person like some of the people here want to have a very small business in a small food truck, not the pictures that or not all the pictures that we were shown, that's under a ton, then having that parked in a driveway really is not a big inconvenience for someone. And you know, I live, a guy who lives next door to me, whose back door is, I would say, 20 feet from my house. He works at a power plant, and when there's a snowstorm or something in the middle of the night, he's got to go to the power plant, because whatever he does. And you know, we all know that, and it's not a big problem that he's moving his car in the middle of the night to go. So I really think we need to be sensitive to the small the small business owner who's just trying to do something on their own. They're not running a big company, and parking a small vehicle in the driveway is really, I don't think is a big deal. I agree they shouldn't be servicing the truck, but I think we've gone over that. I mean, as far as putting food in and cooking, but we've gone over that all that's illegal anyway. So we don't have any control over that because the health department says you can't do that. So this is really a parking debate more than anything. So I'll be supporting the amendment.
Councilor Navarez.
Thank you. Again, yes, I agree with Councilman McCauley as well, and to the motion that Councilman Donegan has put before us. Again, I also think that it could potentially open a can of worms in the sense of plumber, electrician, and commercial vehicles being parked on their residential property. And so if we don't allow MFEs, well, eventually that means that we're not going to also allow other vehicles to be parking in residential areas. And so as far as like a no servicing area at night, I'm not sure if that would fall under an ordinance as far as noise ordinance or so forth. But I received many emails and phone calls as well, messages via social media, and particularly obviously within my ward. And this is a very tough subject, particularly with the parking situation. And it was a 50-50, but now it's actually saying, you know what, they're property owners, and this is obviously, we're considering that it's a very condensed area in some of the areas in Edgewood. But I think that having this verbiage on this ordinance the way it is, on not allowing someone to park their food trucks in their residential in their homes, in their driveway, particularly because it's going to then exclude ice cream truck. I'm wondering if there's just any way, just like we said, is there any way that we would then strike that, support the motion before us, and maybe allow a 1 year and see how that works. Because I really think that once we say no parking on MFEs, eventually we're going to have no parking on for other commercial vehicles. And unfortunately, in this case, it would actually hurt and impact, as we have before us, the gentleman who said that then they wouldn't even be able to park the lemonade truck. Although I know it's a state issue and that might require state legislation at that end. But given the fact that it has no overnight parking, I'm not going to be able to support this that way.
Councilman Paplaskas.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. To the sponsor of this amendment, can you reread for me your amendment or what this section from 205 to 210 is going to look like after?
What I would propose that it would read is, no person shall park, idle, or store an MFE in front of a residence or in a driveway of a residence for the purpose of preparing food in said food truck, or in said truck.
Okay, so my question to the solicitor is the 1-ton ordinance that's already on the books would apply, correct? To MFEs? It applies to everything. 1-ton, commercial, over. All right, for the sake of the benefit of the doubt, and I do feel for the ice cream people that are getting bundled in with the state, I am going to vote for this amendment tonight. We'll see how it goes. We can always put something back in and revisit this if it becomes an issue. But I appreciate your hustle and bustle. I have 3 jobs myself, and I don't want to do something that would, or vote for something that would exclude you from earning a living. So I'll vote for the amendment tonight.
Council Vice President.
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to ask through the chair to the solicitor, one of the solicitors, I made the comment earlier that I thought that the ice cream truck really was not affected, would not be affected because they're not loading or unloading their wares on the property. If we did just the 1 ton amendment.
I think it's a good attempt, but I don't necessarily agree with it because the state defines the MFEs by use. We define certain habitability requirements by tonnage, and you're trying to equate the two, and I don't think that they would really go together.
But the ice cream truck loads their ice cream at the distributors. They don't do it, they don't have a commissary at home.
Right.
And they don't necessarily need a commissary. They go and they load the ice cream.
I think they're still being defined by the state as an MFE.
Right, but if we allow them to park, if they're under 1 ton, if they're allowed to park in their driveway, they're not in violation of the other provisions of this section of the ordinance. Well, they're not servicing the truck at home. That's my point.
Let me offer you this practical suggestion. I think the 400 to 300 is going to require re-advertising anyway. Over the next week or so, why don't you guys email me all your questions and I'll try to have something reworked for next week. Would that be fair? I don't think we can't pass it tonight because someone who thought they were safe for 400, all of a sudden, if they were within between 400 and 300, said, well, I should have come to this meeting because now their rights are affected. So we have to re-advertise it anyway. So we can't pass it tonight anyway. So let me research that issue to see if the use prevails over the 1 ton.
My other comment quickly is that the amendment by Councilman Donovan would also remove all those other restrictions that Councilman Brady's constituents have been speaking about in servicing, preparing, and loading, cleaning the trucks in a driveway. So if they have a 1 ton or less truck, they're going to be able to do whatever they want from 12 midnight to 6 a.m. I don't see how that wouldn't be prohibited, and other vehicles don't operate once they're parked. Quite simply. Anyway, that's it.
Councilman Paplaskas, then you know the question I'm going to ask, kind of the logistical question. We have a safety services meeting on July 1 where we're supposed to have this stuff done by. So logistically, now that we have to re-advertise it, are we having a special full council meeting on Friday? Or are we just continuing everything that comes in front of us July 1?
Everything that comes in front of us July 1 to August 1.
Madam Clerk, what's the game plan? We have to re-advertise this ordinance now. We have to have it done by July 1.
I'm not calling a special meeting on Friday, no.
So safety services on July 1, we just continue everything that's food truck related?
We're not going to have a food truck ordinance, so it seems to be the case.
Okay.
Councilman Donovan?
The only thing I would have to say regarding Council Vice President Favicchio's comments and concerns, and they're legitimate concerns, but from what I've heard is that the Health Department already prohibits a lot of those things. But again, I would just ask, what is substantively different between servicing a food truck or cleaning a food truck and cleaning, I don't know, a plumber's van or an electrician's van? I mean, what is the substantive difference between those two acts, and why would one require being prohibited under city code while the other one isn't? And regarding then, someone coming home and cleaning, and making noise, well, if they're cleaning at 4 a.m. in their driveway and it's above the decimal level for city code, well then the code needs to be enforced, and if it's under it, then it's okay.
I'll make a point of personal privilege because the different types of businesses operate at different hours. The guy that's got a landscaping truck comes home, they clean the truck, but it's not operating at 3 in the morning. Whereas a food truck that might do breakfast runs or come home late, if they're cleaning their vehicle and loading or unloading at 3 a.m., they're going to make a lot of noise. Yes, they are going to violate the noise ordinance, but they're going to be a nuisance. It's a different type of business. They have different hours. The ones that don't operate during the night or need to do any servicing, that's a different story. But when you hear a tailgate drop at 4 in the morning, it wakes everyone up.
Thank you. Since we have to re-advertise this and go through the committee hearing again, and then advertise it again and go to the full council, I'll make a motion to continue this ordinance to the July 1st meeting, back to Safety Services Committee, where we can hash this all out again in the committee forum.
I have a motion to send us back to committee. Do you have a second? Second. I have a second.
Point of information. I'm going to make sure we're doing it right. Should it be on safety services or is it an ordinance? That's my only other question for the solicitors.
Yeah, it kind of defaults to me. I can send it, the chair who just made the motion. We can send anything over we want, just because this is food trucks, it kind of sits in both. It does. So,
Licensing issue. Through the chair.
yes, Madam Clerk.
This is a licensing permitting issue which is normally heard by Safety Services. It was initially referred to Safety Services.
Then we're good. Okay. That's fine. I have a motion to send back to Safety Services for another hearing. I have a second. Under discussion, seeing none. John, what do you got?
The only question is, do you still vote on the amendment?
Motion to continue, send it back to committee, supersedes your motion to amend. So no. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Stichels?
No.
Councilman Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilman Vargas? Yes. Councilman McCoy?
Yes.
Councilman Biden?
No.
Councilman Brady?
Yes.
Councilman
Yes.
Yes. Yes, I would recommend July 1st will be here very quickly. So, Councilman Medallion, if you have amendments you'd like to make, I would request that you send them to the solicitor, let them take a look at them, the clerk. I think we can, or the clerk, so we can just kind of expedite this.
Yeah, that is the only amendment.
The last one? That's it. Okay, so we can handle that at that continuation meeting. Councilmember
I
Paploskas.
just want to take a lot of personal privilege. I want to acknowledge a Boy Scout that's been sitting here this evening, Scout Zukowski from Troop 66. I know you're working on your communication merit badge, so we've seen a lot of communication tonight, and thanks for coming to the meeting, and I hope the next time I see you, we're here giving you a citation for your Eagle. So keep up the good work.
Councilman Brady.
I also want to thank all the small business owners and the food truck owners that came out tonight and spoke. It's obviously a complicated issue, and it's one that came up right when I joined the council, and the fact that this council is spending hours and hours and hours on this ordinance to make it right, I think is very important. So, we're trying to show that we're a food truck friendly city that also cares about residential concerns and existing businesses. So we're certainly working hard with you guys, and I hope we can come to a final resolution that everyone will be happy with.
Councilman Medallion.
I'd like to second Councilman Brady's sentiment, and despite the fact that we might have some minor differences of opinion, not disagreements on some of the things in the ordinance, there really isn't anyone better on the council or more qualified to work on this than Councilman Brady, and I know he put a lot of work into this, so we're lucky to have him on the council working on this issue.
Hey, Scout Zukowski. Come here. Come on, I'll invite you. What do you think? It's communications, you gotta communicate. Say, Finance Committee, Council Vice President Favecchio, you have the floor. Got it? Do it.
He's conflicted. Council President, he's conflicted. I told him to say motion to adjourn.
Say motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Nobody second that. This is communication, so as the council president, what I do up here is I watch all these 8 people. As laws come up, We go through them, we debate them, I recognize all the people, and I let them have this say. This is the art of communication. Cool? All right, get back down. Council Vice President, the chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. Finance Committee met, and first we had the resolution authorizing real estate tax abatements. I'd entertain a motion.
I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Under discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Next, we had resolution authorizing motor vehicle tax abatements. Approved unanimously in committee.
Motion approved. Second. A motion, second. Okay, did I get a second? Thank you. A motion and a second. Under discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes. Next, we had the tax interest waiver approvals, passed unanimously. Urge passage here. Motion to approve.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Under discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please take the roll on the tax interest waiver approvals.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. Yes. Just to make all the council members aware, yes, before we get off taxes, the motor vehicle tax bills should be going out Friday. There was communication today between Capuano and the company that prints them. It takes 5 days to print them, so they should be in town Friday, hitting the mail. Well, to go down. But everyone's been asking about car taxes all over the Facebook. Yes, Jay, yes, Director.
They will be due to July 31st. The real estate and sewer are due July 15th.
So we get an extra 15 days? I will pay my car taxes on July 30th.
That was our fault. We were waiting for a decision on the state.
Blame the state. I love it. I'm just joking. Council Vice President, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
519-11.
And the amendments to the car taxes looks like they're going to be finalized with the state, so that's what they were waiting for. Mr. Capuano was waiting for, so they should go down. 5-19-01, ordinance authorizing the city to transfer the remaining balances in the budget stabilization fund to the general fund, sponsored by council members Stikos, Brady, and myself. This passed in committee. It was passage.
Entertained motion approved.
Motion approved.
Motion and a second on discussion. Seeing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Next, we entertained 5-19-02, ordinance authorizing the city to utilize Western and Eastern Cranston police impact fees to offset the rental expenditure for the police station, sponsored by council members Stikos, Brady, and Favicchio. This passed also, and this is something we've done in the past.
Motion approved. I have motion approved. I have a second. Motion and a second. Under discussion. Seeing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Next, we had a resolution authorizing the city to consent to mutual aid agreements with the towns of Coventry, Johnston, Providence, Situate, Warwick, West Warwick with respect to its police departments. This was sponsored by the mayor. This passed unanimously. Urge passage here.
Motion approved.
I have motion approved, have a second. Have a second. Under discussion, Councilman Brady.
I'm just wondering if the council pleases, do we all want to co-sponsor this, or do we just leave it at?
It's fine.
No, I'm asking, is that for more clarity?
Technically, I believe only the sponsor can allow you to co-sponsor their legislation.
He's not here.
Therefore, he's not here this evening.
Understood. Thank you for the clarification.
I would assume, no. A motion, a second, under discussion, Council Vice President.
Thank you, Council President. Yeah, this, just to let everyone know, we've vetted this with regard to cooperation from the other cities and towns, so this is not something where we're providing more services than we're receiving, et cetera. So it was, the police department is in favor of this.
Director Krill, as the mayor's representative, do you have an issue with Mr. Brady, with Councilman Brady co-sponsoring this? We have no issue. Okay.
I'm sure we'll
Ed, you're on. You're in. Councilman Hopkins.
Just raising a concern about the amount of cooperation we're getting from the town of Johnston, especially when you drive up Plainfield Pike and look at those stupid windmills that are up there. So I'll be voting against this.
Can't use them. Anyone else? That being said, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Councilman Gray.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman Vecchio. Chairman McCauley, Claims Committee.
Thank you, Council President. This is strictly informational purposes. It's listed, and just a side note, Council President, July meeting has been canceled till August. There aren't that many claims to deal with. So,
Thank you, Chairman. Clerk, please note the Claims Committee for July has been canceled. Public hearings, this will be open to any undocketed item, anything anyone would like to talk about. I will hold yard works until my section under Council President Communications, where we're going to have more of a debrief. Good evening.
What's your name?
You all know my name. Connie DeRosa, 97 Cypress Drive. Good evening, President Farina and council members. On several occasions during the last 3 years, I have come to this podium to voice my concerns and those of the Garden City Alliance regarding the intersection at Saconaset Crossroads and Hillside Road. In our opinion, this is the most dangerous intersection in our neighborhood. The engineering of this intersection may have been workable 20 years ago, but traffic has vastly increased since then, and the situation has become compounded by the expansion of Garden City Center. The city cannot rely on the decision-making powers of the driving public. Motorists are perpetually confused when they converge at this intersection. No one seems to know who has the right of way. Taking a left turn at the top of Hillside to travel east on Saconaset is a risky decision, and likewise drivers coming from New London to take a left onto Hillside are in the same position. This chaos causes gridlock and aggressive driving. None of this is acceptable. This matter will not resolve itself. With the development of Topgolf ominously close and the additional traffic that will be associated with it, we feel the above-mentioned intersection will become more treacherous. We understand the proposed frontage ramp designed to funnel motorists into Chapel View may not become a reality. This is disturbing news. That ramp was intended to relieve traffic congestion in Saconaset. The city needs to be aggressive in addressing this situation to achieve a level of safety at this intersection.
Garden City Center is responsible for most of the traffic generated at the top of Hillside Road. With that said, management from Garden City Center should be included in discussions to resolve this problem. In the last several months, there have been many proposed ordinances to deal with other intersections under the city code entitled Motor Vehicles and Traffic. We want to know when we will see Saconaset at Hillside Road added to the docket, and changing the timing in the traffic signals is not a fix. In addition to the above, many residents of the Garden City neighborhood have valid concerns about the stunning increase in speeding that is rampant on the neighborhood streets. Namely Poplar Drive, Wayside Drive, Longacre, Garden City Drive, and Cypress Drive. This type of reckless driving poses a very serious risk to those residents who enjoy walking, hiking, and running in the neighborhood. It is not safe to engage in these activities if motorists break the speed limit on our streets. Most are guilty of driving 40 to 45 miles an hour. Stop signs are ignored on a regular basis, and no one seems to know the meaning of a yield sign. It is not okay for residents or non-residents to drive on our neighborhood streets with total disregard for pedestrians of all ages. We believe most of the motorists are using our neighborhood as a shortcut to Pontiac and/or Saconaset. The city nor the police department can fix bad driving habits, and we understand that. We only ask that you come up with a solution to resolve this very critical and potentially dangerous situation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Anyone else to speak on any undocketed items? Name that for the record, Mr. Doe.
Douglas Doe, 178 Lippin Avenue. I'm just here to thank the sponsors and co-sponsors of the solar ordinance that's on the agenda tonight, the new business. Councilman Stelkos, President Farina, Councilman Beatty, and Councilman Hopkins. I hope when this comes back to the council for a vote, it's unanimous, and we can move forward with a new ordinance, fresh and clean, without any pressure from developers. I saw Mr. Murray's email. It's nice to know that they notified someone that the project wasn't operational. They never notified their neighbors. In fact, it's been 21 months and they still haven't cleaned up the construction debris on our road. But I've been a little bit disappointed. After 21 months of this misery, I was really looking forward to the ribbon cutting ceremony. I assumed the mayor would be there and the Providence mayor would be there because they're getting all the net metering credits. And so this guy would be there. Maybe their financial backers, Captorta Partners, who may or may not own the project, would be there. They've got a big photograph of it on their front page of their website. And who knows, maybe even DSM Realty, their landlord may have showed up. It's been 3 years. I have no idea where they are. They've never made an appearance. And the governor of the state senator and the president of the Senate went to a North Providence dump for the ribbon cutting ceremony for a little while. That was a measly 2.6 megawatts. We were 21.5, the biggest one in the state. No one shows up. That's maybe an oversight. They may be planning for later on in the summer. Or maybe they just decided they've had enough publicity of this project in the front page of the Providence Journal. I'm not quite sure which, but I'm a little disappointed. But seriously, I hope this council makes arrangements for a site visit to look at our site and the Hope Road site. So you go out there and see for yourselves or walk around and get a good idea of what they've done to part of Western Cranston. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, the section of the meeting is now closed. Election of city officials. Charter Review Commission, we have 2 additional appointments. Councilmember Vargas appointed Katie Nee from Ward 1. Council Vice President Vecchio appointed Matthew Riley from Ward 6. On the Arts Commission, looks like we have a couple of new member appointments, and then 5 reappointments and 2 alternates. So whoever would like to appoint these, Councilman Stichels, would you like to do the honors?
Move the appointments that are listed here.
I have a motion to approve all the appointments listed on the docket as a block. It would be new member appointments of Linda Peterson, Nancy Vituli, member reappointments of Len Cabral, Paul Carpentier, Kevin Flynn, Leah Thompson-Hill, Salvatore Mancini, and alternate appointments of Danielle Izzi and Helene Messina. Councilor Stichels.
Yeah, I'd just like to say anyone who was a member and asked to be reappointed was reappointed. And then we have the 2 new council appointments. Linda Peterson has been an alternate and active on the commission as an alternate. And Nancy Vituli is the arts, the theater teacher at Cranston West, related to John Donegan somehow. I can't quite remember how. That's the 2 appointed, and then the alternates, 2 alternates, and I believe the mayor has an appointment or 2 that we're waiting for.
Okay, we have a motion to appoint all these people. I have a second. Under discussion, seeing none. Councilman Brady.
Real quick, I just wanted to say I think Ms. Vituli, John's mother, is a great addition. Students come in all the time, some now Hollywood producers, and compliment her. My brother was a student of hers, and her insight and kindness and generosity of the students has been very well noticed over the years that she's been a teacher at Cranston West. So I think she's a great addition. So, thank you.
It's the Arts Commission, but under abundance of caution, I would probably just say recuse.
Right, yeah, that's what I was going to...
Because someday they may get a grant from somebody and have to spend it, and then we get all messy.
Yeah, I'm going to recuse myself from this vote.
For the record, Nancy Vituli is John Donegan's mother. She is a fantastic woman and a member of our teaching professionals in the drama department in our middle schools. She's a great lady. She comes to all the budget hearings and always asks us to try to find more money for the schools. She is fantastic. With that, clerk, please take the roll of the appointments. Yep. All one shot.
Councilman Stichels?
Yes.
Councilman Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilman Barnes?
Yes.
Councilman McCoy?
Yes.
Councilman Brady?
Yes.
Councilman Rosas?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Now on the block of appointments. Motion approved.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second on the block. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Stichels? Yes. Councilman Hopkins? Yes. Councilman Rogers?
Yes.
Councilman McCoy?
Yes.
Councilman Brady?
Yes.
Councilman Rosas?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Report of city officers, there are none. Executive communications. Director Carrillo. We all have been furnished with the report of hiring special counsel consultants pursuant to Charter Section 1505. If you have any questions, now would be the time. Councilmember Donegan.
Sorry for all the questions tonight.
I was waiting for it.
I see on page 9 and 10 of the report that was given us tonight, the legal matter traffic safety litigation, that's now what in previous months that was referred to as the panhandling case.
Yes.
I know that this is, well, it's going to litigation. Is there, I think I had asked last month, is there any idea how much this is going to cost the city?
At the very end, I can't give you an estimate. It looks at this point that it's going to be going to trial unless something changes dramatically. So what that total number could be after trial, I don't have any answer for you, unfortunately.
I guess I would question, the amount that we're spending on litigation on this file. If that money would be better served investing in better practices to actually get to the root of homelessness or poverty, and not towards litigating a case that is, in my opinion, and the court's opinions thus far, against, unconstitutional and inhumane.
Points of information. This is treading on dangerous territory, but
I'm aware if the councilman wants to violate his oath, that's on him.
All I can say is that we're pretty much down the road on this. I don't believe there's going to be any stopping until we go to trial.
Any additional questions on the legal report? Councilmember Stichels.
Yes, at the last meeting, I asked about the Valletta Bergantino case and was told that there was a hearing, I think, early June.
Correct.
Can you tell us what happened?
Both councils supplied the judge with a summary judgment. We're just waiting for his decision.
So there will be a...
Well, we asked for dismissal of the entire case during summary judgment. I don't know if that's going to happen, maybe parts of it, maybe not all of it, but we're just awaiting the judge's decision.
And they asked for a summary judgment also.
Oh, we asked for it, and they're defending why they shouldn't be summary judgment against them. They put forward the case as they see fit.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional questions on the legal report? Seeing none. Request to place in the pension roll effective July 5th, 2019. Chief William McKenna, Cranston Fire Department.
I think we pretty much have this covered. Chief McKenna will be retiring July 5th. Assistant Chief Valletta is being put forward as his replacement, and that's going to be heard July 1st during finance.
Thank you. So I have a motion to place Chief McKenna on the pension roll. A second? So motion. Motion moved. A second. Under discussion. Seeing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Request to be continued in service for 1 year, Assistant Chief Paul Valletta.
Yes, Chief Valletta has met all the qualifications and is asking to be continued in service for at least 1 more year.
Motion approved. I have a motion, do I have a second?
second.
A motion and second. Under discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Stichels? Yes. Councilman Hopkins? Yes. Councilman Rogers?
Yes.
Councilman McCollum? Yes. Councilman Jonathan?
Yes.
Councilman Brady?
Yes.
Councilman Hopkins?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. You want to read the last one?
Charter Review Commission, Mayor Fung has chosen Steve Frias as his appointment to the Charter Review Commission.
Thank you, and that closes the business of executive communications for the evening. On to Council President Communications. Status update regarding planting of trees on Sockernasset Crossroads. This has been on for a while. I know we have some trees that we can plant.
Yes, during Top Golf, it was determined or asked for and granted that 15 trees be donated to the city to be planted in the area of Sockernasset Crossroad and or wherever the tree warden sees fit. We do have some areas that we'd like to see them done. If they're not all going to go to Sockernasset, Wayside Drive has been an area identified for the trees. I've sent 2 emails and 3 messages to Mr. Coates looking for a point of contact in order to obtain the trees. I just have not heard back from him yet. So that's ongoing. I'm assuming planting won't be this summer anyway, probably till the fall.
Councilman Stichels?
Yeah, I was just going to urge you to plant them, to not have them plant when it's hot. That happened the last time.
Okay.
They died.
I'm actually going to hold yard works until the last one, just so I can get through the other 2. Lawn petitions update?
Yes, I know this came up last meeting, and Mr. Mayo was here. Looking forward to working with the complainants regarding his piece of property. I believe he's trying to make a good faith effort to do that. However, we were there this morning at 6:30 for him being in violation of the prior to 7 noise ordinance. So that was a police report was taken on that. He was given a warning relative to that. And he's also been in communication with Dave Rodeo, and they plan on having a meeting. Mr. Rodeo feels there may be some discrepancies between what he's allowed to do on that piece of property and what he's actually doing. And I know Mr. Meyer's response to that is, I've been here 15 years doing this, nothing's changed, so we need to find a middle ground where we can kind of work together and come to a conclusion.
So it sounds like the violations that he came before us last time before between the asphalt piles and the work he's doing, that it would be removing earth and he's still doing those things?
Some of those things are still being done, yes. But like I said, the communication's been there. I've spoken to him, and Mr. Rulio has spoken to him. And let's say we're getting better communication from him as opposed to our other issues in the city.
Councilman Stichels?
So what exactly is the permitted use there?
Well, I believe it's a nursery. It's permitted, zoned as a nursery. I know some of the complaints have been the parking of snow plowing equipment on the property, mulch operation, pile of asphalt that he has on there. So that's some of the things that Mr. Rodeo is going to be sitting down with him and looking into further.
All right.
Along with the operating prior to 7 a.m., which obviously he's definitely doing because it happened this morning.
Last meeting, I talked with the son, or the two of us talked with the son, and he had an email from Stan Pikel basically saying what you're doing is okay. So I just want, you should be aware, if you aren't aware of that.
I am not aware of that. But I know there was a violation, I want to say, in beginning of 2018 that never went anywhere, so I don't know if you rectified that prior to the continuance of that case or not, but I've spoken to Mr. Rodeo, and he's going to have that conversation with him to make sure that compliance is our goal.
And we clear that making those silt barriers that he talked about, the stuffed sock silt barriers,
to prevent the leakage of materials.
Yeah, that would not be an activity covered by the Freedom of Farm Act because it's not for the farm.
Yes, I think that's where the lines are blurred, I believe. What's allowed and what's not allowed according to the Freedom of Farm Act, and I don't know if there aren't many places in the city that are covered by that, I feel, but that's Mr. Rodeo's area, and I think he's addressing it properly right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Leanne reached out to the property manager for the Walmart property, explained to her the engineer's report that spoke of the guardrail. We have not heard back from the property manager relative to that, and I think at this point, that's our only responsibility to move forward with that particular issue.
Lastly, that works. So, then, hear from that works. Maybe you okay first?
They were given that letter from Mr. Rodeo saying that they're not allowed to process material on the property. We gave them about a week to 10 days since it was sent to get that and understand it. Mr. Rodeo went down there, spoke to the yard manager, explained to him that that piece of processing equipment cannot be utilized. It's outside of their zoning. They understand that. That has not happened to our knowledge since they received the letter. The 3 violations that we spoke of in April went to court at the beginning of June, and they're going back in July 18th, I believe it is, for trial on those 3 separate violations. Because Yardworks is in accordance with the letter to our satisfaction right now, the Superior Court action is being held.
Okay, thank you to the Council President. So I have here, I just wanted to hand these out. I don't know what the process is to just have each member of the council receive this. This is a copy of the letter
was sent out that Mr. Perillo was just referring to by Mr. Rodeo to Yardworks about the processing. Once you all have it, I'd like to just read it to you.
I'll give this to Mike.
So when we met at the last full council meeting last month, we were told by Mr. Perillo that a letter was going to be sent out. At that time, it wasn't fully drafted, but it was being comprised by Mr. Videcchio and Mr. Rodeo. And this is what they've come up with, and it says the following. Dear Mr. Fox, as a result of a recent inspection and review of the video footage obtained from abutting neighbors, it is clear that Yardwork Investments, LLC, Yardworks is conducting operations in violation of allowable uses under the zoning code of the city of Cranston. The permissible use for a contractor yard, as defined under the code, consists of storage of equipment and supplies, fabrication of subassemblies, and parking of wheeled or tracked equipment. Processing and/or separating raw materials is not an allowed use. I'll read that again. Processing and/or separating of raw materials is not an allowed use. Yet, this department is in possession of considerable evidence that Yardworks is, quote-unquote, processing raw material for eventual sale off-site. Some of these activities include, but are not limited to, sifting, moving, and breaking down sand, gravel, loam, rock, and concrete. This is clearly processing and not storing materials. In addition, this type of activity also arguably constitutes recycling. Under the code specifically defines recycling facility in part as a facility that accepts recyclable materials and may perform some processing activities. The principal function is to separate and store materials that are ready for shipment to end-use markets. The presence of power-driven processing equipment distinguishes a processing facility from a collection facility. Recycling is not an allowable use in a C5 zone. Continued on the next back of the page. Under either scenario, it is the city's position that Yardworks is clearly engaging in activity that is not allowed in a C5 zone. You are therefore required to cease and desist processing and/or recycling activities forthwith. Failure to comply with this notice may result in legal action, including but not limited to issuance of violation notices, show cause citations, and/or a request for injunctive relief in Rhode Island Superior Court. Now, the reason I'm reading that to you is because when I've spoken to Mr. Perillo in the past, over the past week or so, since the letter's gone out, his position, or not just him personally, but the city's position through Mr. Perillo is that what they're doing there, the way the city defines the term processing, what it should say there is that they're not going to allow sifting. Because according to the conversations that I've had with Mr. Perillo, they can't sift there. So they've asked Yardworks to remove the sifter from the property. And as you're all fully aware, we've also had Yardworks remove trailers from the property that they went and then brought right back onto the property, new trailers, for which we're back in municipal court again. And then the floatables issue, which we're back in municipal court about, which is the same issue that we were in court about before, that was never dealt with. It was just said that it was in compliance, but it never was. And Mr. Piker was out sick that day. We remember the whole story. And now the new violation is that the electrical hookups to the new trailer that's in violation are also not allowed or permitted. So those are the three things that are going on in municipal court that are not new in any way except for the electrical hookup. But this other issue here, which is the main issue, is the noise and the processing of debris, whether that be using a front loader or a backhoe to pick up any type of dirt, stone, mulch, debris, whatever have you, and transport it from, say, this section of the room to that section of the room. It's not allowed. It's not an allowable use. Yet, the city, it says it right in here, that's why I read it to you. But yet the city maintains, instead of ceasing and desisting, what we're doing is, we're just going to cherry pick and we're going to take out, all right, you can't sift. And maybe that'll satisfy the neighbors, and we'll be happy, but just no more sifting, even though we all know that they're going to bring that sifter back on the property. In fact, I've seen that sifter right outside the gate. I took a picture of it last week, so it's right there to be used. I can't watch these guys like a hawk every 5 minutes. I have a wife where I have to go to work and have a family. But trust me when I tell you, they're going to sift again. And Mr. Perillo said, well, if we catch them, then we can cite them, and then we can maybe eventually go down to Superior Court that way. And we've sort of totally gotten off the path of the other previous avenue, which was seeking some type of judgment in Superior Court. We're no longer going that path. So when I said, well, we're not going that path now all of a sudden, then let's go to the next path, which is what was told to me by Mr. Perillo, which was, once the Superior Court situation was handled, we could then do decibel testing, which we've received 3 different quotes from 3 different decibel companies that Captain Russell Henry had gotten months ago. And I said to Mr. Perillo, okay, well, if we're not going to go forward with the Superior Court situation right away, if at all, ever, then let's do the noise decibel testing, because they're clearly in violation of the noise decibels constantly. I mean, we're woken up at 7 a.m. and it goes on all day, the banging of rocks and other debris and materials all day long. And it just so happens that the noise decibel levels have actually been lessened, lowered. They used to be, I believe, 65 dBs. They're now down to, I think, 55. So that even helps us even more. So it'll be even less of a burden for us to have to prove. But the bottom line is, the only thing the city has done here is they've tried to, at least, and I give them credit, they're trying, but it's not enough. I'm grateful for what they've done, but it's just a little bit. It's not enough. So they've told them they can't sift. Whether they listen or not is another story. But like I said, that's just one issue going on here. They're using front loaders, backhoes, other heavy equipment day in and day out, these massive trucks that literally vibrate through our homes. And when we met with Mayor Fung on March 6th, we presented a 13-page brief to him. One of the things that was brought up in that brief said, Section 2 provides that C5 district, no vibration is permitted, which is discernible to human sense of feeling, for 3 minutes or more in duration in any 1 hour of the day between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Every time that front loader starts moving around, it's vibrating through our homes, and it's moving around constantly. When I spoke to Mr. Perillo about this particular issue, the vibrations in our homes, not even the noise, just to get down to the vibration, I was told that someone spoke to Chief Judge Smith, and that he said if there was a witness from the city, and one of us there present when these vibrations are occurring, that yard works could then be cited for that as well. I mean, there's plenty for the city to go after down there at the Yardworks facility. I mean, there's the bringing in of materials that they've done to alter the topography of the land, which are harboring rodents and other vermin and things that Mr. Rodeo told me that he was going to cite them on, which when I asked him about it last week, he said to me, well, I told them about it, they're going to take the piles down. I'm willing to bet nothing's been done when I call Mr. Rodeo tomorrow. As far as, not on Mr. Rodeo's part, but as far as Yardworks' part. I'm sure they haven't listened to one thing he's told them. So the city needs to step up their efforts. There's plenty to go on here at Yardworks. They need to enforce the law. Yardworks doesn't really care about these nice letters, and I appreciate it. It is a nice letter, and I'm not trying to be condescending. I appreciate all the help that we've received from the council in particular, and your support. We're very grateful for it. And I'm continuing to work with the city to try and get what we deserve, which is justice and the right for us to fairly enjoy our property, which we're not enjoying because of what's going on down there. And something has to be done. I'm going to come to these meetings every month forever until this is finally dealt with. I'm not going away. My My neighbors aren't going away. The other neighbors that live around us that are getting frustrated aren't going away because I won't allow it. No one's going away. This needs to be stopped, okay? And we're not going to wait a year and a half for Mayor Fung to walk out the door and somebody else to come in here to make it stop. I want to stop now. You guys need to enforce the law. That's the bottom line. So I want to know why we're not doing decibel testing. I want to know why they're not ceasing and desisting everything that was said in this letter, and why only the sifting is being acknowledged, and that is the only thing. So we need answers. I mean, like I said, I'm going to keep coming. Just want to make sure I've mentioned everything I've had to mention here. I think I have. And I sure hope that when we go back to municipal court on July 18th, that Yardworks is going to receive some type of serious fines because they received a $110 donation that they had to make to the local library last time, and you saw what that did. They just chuckled, mailed the check, and now they're back operating out of compliance in that regard. So I'd just like to know what the city's going to do as far as the noise, as far as the ceasing and desisting, and everything else that I mentioned. Thank you.
The letter prevents them from processing material. It doesn't say they can't sift, it says they can't process. Mr. Rodio's determination of processing is that sifting machine. He does not believe a front loader picking up dirt and moving it from one portion of the property to the other is processing. That's moving dirt. Nothing's being processed in that transaction. So he doesn't feel that that is in violation of that current letter. The decibel testing estimates we're getting, I'm seeing that those are still valid. I'm calling the company this week because they are 3 months old. I want to verify that those numbers are accurate that they gave us. Court is court. I don't know what else I can address.
Well, when I spoke to Mr. Rodeo, he had said that, the laws are vague. Those were his words. And I know back in 2013, there was an overhaul of the different ordinances, and maybe that obviously needs to be done again because there's no fabrication of sub-assemblies as was previously the situation of what was said by the previous building official. So we're off of that now. And now we're saying that there's no sifting. But I'm saying that there's processing is when you take something from one area to another, you're processing it. You're moving it from one spot to another. We're saying that's processing. The city's saying it's not. Last time we were in this position, we said, Mr. Verdecchio stood up over there and he said, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove, and we're going to take this thing for a judgment in Superior Court, and now all of a sudden we're off of that path. So I don't know what changed, not much, and this is where we're at. So we have a fundamental disagreement on what's going on down there, but I can assure you that if you were living where we're living and dealing with what we're dealing with day in and day out for 15 years, and I've been on this thing since April 28th of 2018. I think you all are pretty familiar with me by now. It has to stop. I mean, we're not people that are just being dramatic and people that are crybabies. I mean, this is our lives. It's one thing if you go somewhere and you have a bad day, at least you get to come home and relax and blow off some steam. We're having bad days where we live because of this operation. Where do we go to blow off some steam? We have to stay there and deal with it day in and day out. It's not right. And we were there before this operation moved in. Long before. So something has to change here. It just does. I mean, it's not a personal thing with me and you. It's not, it's nothing about that. It's about residents of this city that I've lived in my whole life. Many of these other people have too. And we need justice. We need what's right. I mean, we're tax-paying citizens. You get more tax money from us than you do from that one business down there. What good is it? I understand bringing in business. You want to have business and promote business. I'm all for business too. But not at the expense of people being able to enjoy their homes. You can't do that. And this needs to be enforced, and there has to be a way. So there's a disagreement here, and we have to sit down with the council sits down with the administration. I don't know, but that's why I'm here. I'm asking for help from the council. So.
Mr. Wilson, I respect you. I respect your neighbors. I can't have Mr. Rodeo go and write a citation for which he doesn't believe in. If he doesn't believe processing is happening, how can we cite him for processing? But that's the thing. Everyone testifying in court saying they're processing, but he doesn't believe they're not. And there's no balancing that between taxes and being able to open a business versus residents. I mean, that's not a fair barometer. Again, we have two separate goals here. My goal is for you guys to be happy and for them to be in business. You want them out of business. They have two disparaging goals. I never said ever they're going to be broached. I don't know. I never said I wanted them out of business. All I've said from day one... Never quoted that say it. The 13-page report says it. Yeah, I want them to comply with the law. If they can somehow comply with the law and park their vehicles on the property and store materials, which is what they're allowed to do, if they can do those two things only, they're fine. They can stay in business. And it's a parking lot. It's not a business. It's a contract, Your Honor.
Robert, what exactly are they doing when they're moving stuff around?
They pick up items with the front loader or the backhoe. They'll grab it, they'll dump it into a vehicle, they'll dump it into another place on the yard. Every time they do that, it makes noise. It creates dust and particulate matter, fugitive dust that goes up into the air. That when I spoke to Mr. Rodeo about that particular issue, he had said to me that he was down at the property, I don't know, whenever I had spoken to him, he said that it was a little windy that day. And I said, well, while they were conducting their operations, and I said, well, did they have their sprinkler system on that they're supposed to have in place to dampen down the dust and things? And Mr. Rodeo said to me, yes, they do, but it doesn't cover the entire acreage of the property where they're doing all the work. Well, and what am I supposed to feel bad that they don't have the proper things in place to dampen down the entire yard where they're doing work? It should. That's the law. They have to follow the law. It's not, oh, they don't have it, so, they're trying, but they're not, So that's what's going on. It's the importation of materials that they bring from off-site that they dump onto the property. That's how it starts. Then they take those materials and then they process them, moving them, sifting them, whatever the situation is. Then they dump those materials into other areas, whether it be into a sifter, whether it be into the back of another truck, whether it be into another pile in the yard, whether it be stones that they're dropping all over the place, whether it be banging and breaking. In this letter, the other thing it says in here is about recycling. And I asked Mr. Rodeo point blank, what do you mean by recycling? And he said if they're breaking up rocks or doing different things. So, it's so wishy-washy. You can have 10 different building officials here, and you can get 10 different answers as what's allowable and not allowable, and that's why this needs to be taken to the next level. We're dealing with, Pikel said one thing, Rodeo says something else, and you get another guy in here, a woman in here, they're going to say something else, and that's just the way it goes.
Okay. The other question I had is about this whole temporary structure, and I guess this is for, for either Mr. Verdecchio or Mr. Kirschenbaum, but the Yard Works came to the council with a request for a temporary structure permit. And the council voted that down. The Safety Services Committee voted that down.
Yes.
And they were then told to move their trailers,
yes,
which they did.
Yes.
And then what they did was they got a truck, a box truck, and they moved that onto the property, and they made that into an office.
Yes.
Because, I've seen that. I went down there and I saw it. So how is it that that's permitted? We have not given them permission to have a temporary structure.
That's why it's a municipal court, Councilman. I don't know what the Safety Services can do regarding that, but our remedy right now is cite them and take them back to municipal court.
Well, is the administration's, what is the administration's position on seeking fines for this flagrant violation of the law?
That's at the discretion of the judge. We can't.
But the administration will make a recommendation to the judge.
Yes.
What will that recommendation be?
That they're fined to the fullest.
That they're fined to the fullest?
Yes.
So, and that would be back to what? The day that they put the trailer on there, the vehicle, the box truck?
Back to April 11th. I don't believe we'll go back that far. I don't know if it's a per day violation. I'm not sure what the
penalty phases are for violation of the ordinance. That's up to the judge and the prosecutor.
I believe the code says $50 a day is the penalty that can be assessed.
That's going to be our recommendation to the solicitor, to the judge.
$50 a day.
Whatever the maximum is that we can impose.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Hopkins, if you guys have follow up.
Not on this issue.
Okay.
On a previous issue.
That's fine. We'll finish on first, and then we have any additional comments. Councilman Hopkins.
Just had a quick question. When is the municipal court hearing?
The next municipal court date is July 18th. So basically, the first date was June 6th. That was the arraignment. Now they have until July 18th to continue operating out of compliance. What this really all boils down to, I'm sorry to interrupt you, I just want to say one more thing, is that Yardworks they need a new wetlands permit in order to build a permanent structure down at their property. And when we submitted an application for this new wetlands permit through DEM, Charles Horber told them, he turned it away and said that there are floodplain and floodway issues, and he would not approve it until those were addressed, and they still haven't been addressed. And Yardworks, and also Yardworks submitted plans to Jason Pizzullo and the city, and they were turned away as well. And that was back in January for the wetlands permit application, and I followed up with DEM, and Yardworks is not putting in another request for a new permit because they figure, why do we need to build a new permanent building when we can just keep operating this way where we bring in this new truck, they tell us to take it off, and then we bring in another one, and that's why we operate.
I have another quick question then. So I believe, wasn't your testing that DEM was also doing on the water or the soil testing?
We haven't had any soil testing done. We had tried to reach out to David Choppy, the head of compliance and inspection for DEM, to have that type of testing done. Everybody's short-staffed and overworked, and it's really difficult to try and get anything done. For example, DEM has one air and compliance inspector, a guy by the name of Ralph McCarry, and he's the only one for all of DEM in Rhode Island that handles that one particular issue. So, yeah, I'd like to have the soil tested, but it's hard to get it done.
Thank you. Council President, is there any way to make sure that we get the municipal court schedule? Like, it could be already going up maybe this week, but I don't see it on the calendar for next month. I'm not sure if that would be the clerk or the municipal court who would handle that.
Clerk of the court. Madam Clerk, can you follow up with the clerk of the court and see when the schedule can get online?
I will send you an email tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any additional questions on Yardworks? Well, I'll keep it on for next month. Thank you. We can have some updates at the court hearings and see where to go from here.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Before I come off Council President Communications, I'll let Councilman Hopkins ask some questions I believe on the previous matter.
Thank you, President. Mr. Perillo, I didn't get a chance to respond to your comments about that guardrail at Walmart.
Yes.
You had made I just put a few notes here that you had read the engineer's report.
I read it, yes.
You did?
Yes.
Did you find any fault in that report?
Fault in the report itself, the engineer's report? No.
There was no guilt and no fault in the engineer's report?
There's fault on Walmart.
Right.
Yes. The engineer summarized that there's fault on Walmart's part, yes.
Okay. So with that, knowing that an accident occurred, death resulting, a letter was sent to Walmart, and we've gotten no response to that.
To my knowledge, correct. And a personal communication from Leanne to the property manager.
Okay, and at that point you finished your comments by saying that's the end of all responsibility.
I don't know at this point, Councilman, what else the city can do regarding this situation. Unfortunate as it is, I don't know if we have any legal standing. I mean, I'll defer to the solicitor, but I don't know if we have any legal standing to take any action against Walmart for not being in accordance with the engineer's report.
So what you're telling me is that the city is not going to do any follow-up to that initial letter?
I'm going to have Leanne reach back out to the property manager again.
And if they don't respond, what's our next step? Can we bring them in here and ask them directly how they're going to fix the problem?
Can the council bring them in? I don't know that, sir. Of course. I don't know if they're going to hop on a plane and fly over, but if we wanted to call them before safety services and... What is... The only issue is it's not our report, right?
I just don't know what violation we would list them under. We don't have, if they're picking up a dumpster early, we have something in our code where, that's why they're coming in. I don't know how we would do it. I see Madam Clerk shaking her head. Might be a court issue.
I would defer to the solicitor, but this issue does not come within the licensing jurisdiction of the committee or the council.
Okay. So I'll ask the solicitors to look at this and see if there's a way we could hold a private entity in compliance with an engineer's report that they're obviously not.
The point is that the engineer's report says that Walmart is guilty. They're not in compliance of their safety standards. Our response was to have a guardrail installed, possible maintenance of the flooded area that caused the death. And what we're saying is as a city, we can't do anything about this. And God forbid if it happens to somebody else. It could, because multiple cars have hit the same area. They just haven't been as unfortunate to go down the embankment. And that is clearly stated in that engineer's report, that they are in violation. Yet we send them a letter, and they don't respond to us. That's not going to happen. They need to get in here. So I don't know what the follow-up is on it, but I'd like the administration to look into that.
Yeah, so again, I would ask Solicitor Ross, if you could take a look at that and find a way we could, because that's the city's judgment that we have against them, that we should be able to enforce. I don't know how to do it. To Madam Clerk's plan, I don't know if that's under our offices, but I'd like the legal department to take a look at that. Councilmember Stakos?
Yeah, just a suggestion that isn't there a public nuisance standard of endangering the public health? I would think that would be the avenue to go. Something that they're maintaining something that's dangerous to the public.
Thank you for that suggestion, Councilman. I'll have them take it under advisement. Hopefully by next meeting, we'll leave this on the docket again and get an update from the solicitors on the ways to enforce compliance.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Mr. Peralta.
Moving on to Councilmember Communications.
I was going to say, point of information. I thought we were going to move some of these issues to Public Works.
I had hoped that this section would be smaller this evening. Hopefully the fact that they are here and the administration's aware of them, some that we can go through rather quickly and they won't require lots of discussion and dialogue. So I'm hopeful that, because they got in early, that this will be a quick update as opposed to the marathon sessions we've had the last few months. So we're going to try and see what happens. Councilman McCauley.
Thank you, Council President. I will be brief. Councilmember Hopkins and I met with our grant writer, Lisa Kay, regarding monies that may be available for the project, the Ross Square project. That led to a second meeting today with myself, Ms. Kay, and the director of One Cranston, Ayanna Creighton. We will be setting up a community forum to include Ross Square and area businesses as well as members of the community. The initial stage of this facelift will include to discuss possible new LED lighting, safer walkways and crosswalks, benches, new signage, and additional trash receptacles. These and other improvements will be discussed at the community meeting. I will work with the Cranston Herald as well as Facebook pages to get the word out. I will supply food and beverages. And believe me, I'm trying to, I'm not leaving the administration application out. I certainly welcome Mr. Perillo's input, and I know he was gracious enough to talk with the engineering department, Nick Capezza. I'm just trying to see if I can save some monies, sir, and then come to you and see what we can come up with. I know this will be a phase. Yeah. You said food? Food? I will provide food.
Director Mason did assign Nick Capezza the project of going down and doing a quick evaluation of Ross Square. Basically, a quick summary. The road is approximately a third of a mile long, 10-foot sidewalks, 40-foot wide road surface. Except for the asphalt resurfaced in 2009, all construction is the same since 1983. Areas of concern are sidewalks, tree wells, damage to the sidewalks, and upheaval due to some tree root growth. There definitely are some serious concerns there. An initial assessment, again, this is just throwing numbers out there, an initial assessment just to rectify the safety issues, the upheaval, the sidewalks, and so forth, they have that estimated between $50,000 and $100,000 just to take care of that. A total redesign, like a full-blown new Ross Square, about $2 million. That's what the numbers that they're talking about. This will include, obviously, landscape engineering, architectural engineering, and so forth. But we look forward to working with you and the committee members and moving forward on what we can do at this time.
If I may, sir, Council President, Lisa Kay is working with Rhode Island Foundation and also with Ms. Creighton with One Cranston, and supposedly there are available funds that we as a community will be able to hopefully meet the needs, meet the requirements, I'm sorry. And if we can save whatever money for the taxpayers, and that'll be great. So we'll be working together, I'm sure, with this and Council President and Councilman.
No, Mayor Fung is in full support of this. If we can make this happen, obviously it's probably not going to happen during his administration, but at least we can get the ball rolling.
I appreciate your help. I can finish up my other...
Yeah, you might as well. Keep going.
Just a crosswalk at Woodlawn Funeral Home. So everything else is done.
July. Yeah, just wait for the new funds to come in.
Terrific. Thank you, sir.
Could you check CDBG funds for Rolfe Square? I know there's a section of Rolfe, that area that qualifies for CDBG money. I don't know if Rolfe Square does, but I know some sections of Auburn do. And I know they've been lenient in the past about adjoining village funds to allow use of some CDBG money. So it may be a nice shot to get a shot in the arm for some funding for Rolfe Square. Thank you. Councilmember Stichels, this one's under, or it could be Councilmember Hopkins, Northeast Tree update, and Councilmember Stichels, I don't know what that is.
Northeast Tree, I spoke to Mr. Rodeo. Obviously, he's new with this game. Just gave him a little bit of insight. He's basically wants to start at square one, look at their zoning, look at all the certificates they have, all the licenses they have, and just see if there's anything that we could possibly move forward on. Since they are a licensed arborist and nursery and everything else, he doesn't know, again, he will just start in this process with him. So, Northeast Tree's been very receptive to us. We did reach out to them to get some updated materials. Unfortunately, they had a death in the family, so they weren't able to get back to us. But I think we're going to, again, take it step by step, look at all the documents, and see if anything's changed since 2012, when the last time we took them to court, and go from there. Because that, unfortunately, the arborist's license really allows them to go above the noise restrictions, allows them to mulch and do some of the other stuff within their parameters of their property. So it's something we're definitely working on still.
I know, Dan, I did call you and talk with you. They had stopped for about 2 or 3 months with the mulching, and everything was very peaceful. Then all of a sudden, last week, it started up again. My phone started ringing again. Why are they back doing this? And again, if you go as far as the playground at Garden City School, talk about decibel levels, you can hear it at the playground at Garden City School when they're operating the mulching. Another concern that I did have, drove by this week, after the multiple rainstorms that we've had, they have actually created a dirt road in the middle of their property. So it does go from Pontiac Avenue across from Michelangelo's up to the top of the property. Most of that has been washed out onto Pontiac Avenue. So if you can have an inspector take a look at that, that's going to be a dangerous area. If somebody skids through that, if it becomes mud during the rain, but you'll notice that it is poured down from where they created the road onto Pontiac Avenue.
Yeah, I'll follow up with that.
Councilman Stegos.
I'd like to suggest that when Mr. Rodeo is finished with his review, that maybe we have a meeting where we can sit down and he can go through what he's found and we can ask questions and...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right off the bat, he was surprised that that's a residential area and they're allowed to operate in a residential area. So right off the bat, he's like, how is this possible? And so I started giving him the history of it, and that's where we're just scratching the surface.
Okay, well, if you could let us know when we...
Sure, definitely.
Thank you.
Councilman Stegos, the floor still yours. Hope Farms into compliance fencing.
Hope Farms has swapped out the front fence with the black vinyl per the approval. They've removed the barbed wire from the public view shed. The landscaping the supplemental landscaping is mostly dead at this point, if you've been there. They want to get on record. The plan's never been recorded. So I've let them know that we'll be seeking a cash bond from them for the cost of all the landscaping to be replaced. Installation will be in the fall, October or so. And then we'll do inspections, and probably sometime in the spring we'll decide whether or not to release their cash bond for that. But other than that, it's practically done at this point, so we'll be looking for the cash bond, and that's about it for that project.
What about the last, and maybe this has been changed since the last time I was up there, but those bars on the top of the fence?
Yeah, those are for the barbed wire.
Right.
Those seem to be built into the fence, and that's a little disappointing that those bars are still there, even though they've cut all of the barbed wire out of it. But I don't think that those will be removed in the front.
Well, that kind of destroys or damages the intent of the black fence.
I think the black vinyl honestly didn't make much difference, to be completely honest. Like I went there, I'm looking very closely, and from a distance, doesn't really look all that much difference, to be completely honest. I'm glad the barbed wire is going from public view, but those bars, they're built into the fence. So
could you saw them off?
It's a possibility. I can check with them on that, but they're looking to go on record finally. So I will broach that topic, whether or not they can saw them off or redesign the fence or get rid of them.
Okay. Thank you.
So next time I'll be ready to report out on this. Will be probably sometime in the fall. Okay.
So when should we put it back on the agenda?
Probably November.
November?
Yeah.
Okay, could we make a note to take it off?
Winter, fall, you're stretching it, but...
Yeah, October would be when they do the planting.
Okay.
I
I think they planted way too late, and then we were in the rainy winter, and they all died. I think all of the plants they planted are dead. So.
All right, so we'll put an update on the November docket for this matter.
Okay.
Councilmember Vargas, 1885 Broad Street.
Looking for an update on that, as I just received another email. I did tell him that it was on the docket.
That's the collapsing garage.
Correct.
Yeah, it's supposedly going to municipal court in mid-July. We had a tough time notifying the property owner, last I was told. So supposedly we're going to try to get him into court by the end of July to take care of that issue.
So did we find the owner now, or?
I believe we finally have the right contact information for the owner. That's what I was told by Mr. Ialongo.
When we sent, thank you, Director, when we sent them notification, is that certified or is that just regular mail?
That I don't know.
Okay.
I know the first notices that we did send, they never received, because we had the wrong contact information. So
okay.
Supposedly they did the research, and they're going to be coming in this month.
Thank you. I did have a question. I'm not sure if maybe Director Pizzurro would be able to answer this or not. But is there any way that we can get, and maybe we can touch offline on this, but is there any way we can do a geomapping on properties that are listed on that spreadsheet in which the zoning department takes in? To geomap, just to get a sense as to the areas of where there's been properties that are showing that are being blighted, or like properties like this one, for example.
I think the first point of contact would probably be the inspections department to identify them. And then I don't know if you would really need the geomapping.
Not going to get into too much detail because obviously it's not listed on here or that we can talk about. But I'm just...
We have a new inspector starting July 8th, and I believe Mr. Williams said that he wanted to assign her the task of the abandoned properties and all that we've been working on to that ordinance.
Correct.
So he wants to kind of assign her to that when she starts July 8th.
Is this just a list of the blighted properties, or?
Yeah, properties that are coming in through inspections.
If there's a list,
because we can upload that.
It's easy enough to just identify that list and map them. That's not a heavy lift at all.
Okay.
So if there is a list, and is there other data in the list that you want to?
It's more of addresses, and we can...
addresses are easy enough, but if there's any other data within that list, we could make it more robust if that's what you want, what you're looking to do.
Yeah, I'll reach out to your office tomorrow so we can just talk a little about that, and then with the administration.
Yeah. And that's something we work with IT on that, but something like just making a map of listed properties is pretty easy.
Right, because I just don't want to take a free geomapping site out there and plug in all those addresses, because then that becomes, it is public info, but in the sense of I just don't want to take that for... And for
we could keep something internal until we're ready to do something.
Okay, well, I'll reach out then to the office just to talk about that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Brady, yours is all set. Do you have anything else?
I just did want to share something very, very brief. An update on the Cranston ice rink as a hockey player. I talked to Mr. Schroon earlier today, and we should be receiving insurance money. We received the insurance money for the bubble, so that's good news. It should be out in operation.
In operation for next season.
Next season.
We're going to be taking out all the damage and patching up the bubble. And they're also going to put all the boards, the glass, in the bubble, and a few other things.
Okay, great.
We have the fun with it.
Well, I think that's important. I see a lot of surrounding cities investing in their ice rinks, and I talked to Director Strom about making sure that we're staying up with that, because we don't want to lose revenue from the ice rinks. Obviously, with other cities making their ice rinks state of the art. So I just want to give that update. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I talk about the splash pad, real quick follow-up on Councilmember Vargas. We used to get a list, and it was done by wards. Councilmember Botts had requested that list of the properties that were seen by inspectors. Maybe we can bring that list back or do something similar to that. Another thing real quick, the lines painting, the lines on Cranston Street from the rotary to Sherman Avenue, a lot of angry constituents about the line was painted over dirt. They're supposed to come back. Can we make sure they come back before the angry mob gets me? And then last thing, splash pad. I know when I ran for office the first time, I tossed around the idea of doing a splash pad at Florida Avenue playground. There's a basketball court there that's no longer used. It's one of those things where the water shoots up out of the ground. You know, a splash pad, you see them in water parks. Kids love them instead of a pool. That playground there is the only top park in the city, so it kind of fits that age group. But I had a constituent call me last week, and that brought it back up. I know Councilmember Donegan is having a meeting about that as well. So just trying to put that on there so we can all think about it. That's all I got. Thank you.
I just would like to add to the Public Works calendar, with the permission of the chairman, street paving and street sweeping. And I'd also like to put on my ordinance calendar that private security cameras, an issue with private security cameras. And that's it. Yes.
With that being said, I'll entertain a motion. Well, there is no old business. In direction of new business, I'll entertain a motion to send all the new business to committee. So moved. As listed. I have a motion. I have a second. I have a second. Under discussion. Seeing none, clerk, please take the roll on the motion.
Councilmember Stichels? Yes. Councilmember Hopkins? Yes. Councilmember Vargas? Yes. Councilmember Cole?
Yes.
Councilmember Donovan? Yes. Councilmember Brady? Yes. Councilmember Paplaskas? Yes. Councilmember Victor?
Yes.
Yes. Guys, we're not done yet. Everybody calm down. I'm like the teacher at the end of the class. You must wait until the bell is rung. There is a miscellaneous business on the clerk's desk. The City Council's next regular monthly community meeting will be held on Monday, July 22nd of 2019, with no more business to come before the Cranston City Council this evening. I want to say the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion is second. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.